on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 14th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 19 degrees. It's 18 in Smiths Falls, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. It could be another game changer in the global fight against COVID-19. An American drug maker says its vaccine against COVID-19 has shown high effectiveness against the original strain and the variants. Here's City News reporter Mike Eppel.
Novavax says its late-stage trial of its coronavirus vaccine in a phase 3 trial of nearly 30,000 patients in the U.S. and Mexico found the vaccine was more than 90% effective overall, 100% effective in protecting against moderate and severe disease. It is over 90% effective against all of the variants as well. So Novavax says it's going to file for regulatory approval in the third quarter, hopes to be on to a manufacturing capacity of about 100 million doses by the end of the third quarter. The company's CEO saying the first doses will go to low and middle income countries. And Canada does have access to this vaccine. But again, it looks as though it'll be going to developing nations first, where there is a much lower vaccination rate. Novavax share price up by 11% early on this morning at the Business Center. I'm Mike Eppel.
City News time, 9:01. Now, more Ontarians are eligible for an accelerated second dose of COVID-19. Starting at 8 o'clock this morning, those who received the first jab of AstraZeneca could book a second shot after 8 weeks instead of having to wait for 12. People who live in regions where the Delta variant of COVID-19 is spreading more rapidly and receive their first shot on or before May 9th may also make their appointments for a second dose. City News time, 9:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
On the unsettled side today for Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls, there is a chance of showers, thunderstorms, a high about 24 degrees. Tonight, more showers and thunderstorms at times through the evening, then mainly cloudy overnight, the low near 15. Tomorrow, some showers in the morning, then clearing in 25. For today, the high, 24.
And right now in Ottawa, 19 degrees. It's 18 in Smiths Falls. Quite the dramatic rescue in the middle of Hogsback last night. Firefighters arrived 3 minutes after a call of a person in distress, and they arrived to find a faint glow from a cell phone at the bottom of a steep rock face right in the middle of the river. Now, fire service water rescue teams made their way to the person, half in the fast-moving water and clinging to a rock ledge. After providing a personal flotation device and also a helmet, they secured safety lines, managed to get that person across the fast-moving water and then up the slope to paramedics waiting on shore. That entire operation took about 45 minutes. The 20-year-old man accused of 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 of attempted murder in the deaths of a Muslim family in London, Ontario, is due in court today. Now, police allege the suspect deliberately drove into the family as they were out for an evening walk a week ago Sunday. The weekend funeral service was held outdoors for the family. It brought mourners from across the city and beyond to the Islamic Centre of southwestern Ontario. City News time, 9:03. Our Prime Minister sat down with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg ahead of a meeting of allies in Brussels this morning. They will discuss how to respond to security threats, including what Justin Trudeau told Stoltenberg he sees as a rise in authoritarianism globally.
As you pointed out, Russia is worse now in terms of its engagement with NATO countries and more disruptive than it has been in decades.
Trudeau calls for allies to be united in the face of dealing with countries like China and Russia, as well as challenges like COVID-19 and climate change, which affect security. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Separating headlines
from hearsay.
It's the Rob Snow Show on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
How was your weekend? What did you do? What were you up to? Is it okay if I live vicariously through you? Good morning. Welcome to the Rob Snow Show. On City News, it's great to be back with you. I mean that. Even though it's Monday, I feel like I could have used one more day, but here we go. It's back to life. It's back to reality. It's a Monday morning, and we're here until noon, and we're always thrilled that you've decided to tag along for the ride. It's going to be a very busy news day for us, and I think for the most part, we're going to try and keep it local. What's happening locally with the reopening? What is happening with the virus? What is happening with the situation with the pandemic restrictions? What's happening with the vaccination rollout? We're going to be joined by medical experts this morning and business advocates on, just where we are. With life slowly returning to normal in the nation's capital. Big patio weekend across Ontario, but also in our fight against COVID-19. And certainly on that score, the situation has much improved, isn't it? When you think back to how things were looking a couple of months ago, if you think back to April, back in early April, we were all hopping mad about having to endure many more weeks and many more months of lockdown. But here we are. We've reached the middle of June, 6 months into the year. And the situation is not ideal. Ideal would be no COVID-19 at all, but I don't even know how realistic that is. But the situation is much improved. I can remember, and I'm sure you do, days back in the early spring when the province was reporting on a daily basis between 3,000 and 4,000 cases a day. And now that seems to, is it just me, David? It seems to be around 500 or so, seems to be where we have been for a while. 500, bouncing around 500.
Just about the average, yeah.
Province-wide. So stubbornly high when you think, they've been reporting 200 or less in the province of Quebec, 500 here in Ontario. But it is still, look, it's a big improvement from where we were. And here locally, the situation is certainly a lot better than it used to be. As of yesterday, and we'll get some new numbers in about an hour from now, but as of yesterday, we have 14 people in local hospitals with COVID-19. 14 people. And 3 people in ICU. 3 too many, but 3 people in ICU. All a major improvement. And I'm sure we all remember, I certainly remember it, back to the earliest days of the pandemic. You go back a year and a half ago, and what did we hear repeatedly about the pandemic? About lockdowns, about restrictions, shutdowns. The original goal of all of that, what was it all about? Flattening the curve. Flatten the curve. Why? To preserve surge capacity in the healthcare system. To make sure the healthcare system didn't buckle under the stress of COVID-19. And, I'm telling you, we've been through it together. Okay. We've all been in this together, they tell us, right? That's what we've been told. A few months ago, I was thinking for a while there, and not that long ago, the healthcare system is going to buckle. 700, 800, 900 people in ICU. You're hearing about the situation in ICU here in Ottawa and across the province. People being flown on orange air ambulances from one part of the province to another. It was bleak. So to see this morning 3 people in ICU in Ottawa, according to Ottawa Public Health, 3 people in ICU as of this morning, well, that is encouraging news. We'll take our wins where we can get them. Now, with all of that being said, there are a lot of things I want to get into today. And like I said, we're going to talk to medical experts on where we are in this fight against COVID-19. Can we declare victory? Can we have a parade? Can we have some Canada Day fireworks? We're going to talk about that side of it, and we're going to talk about the pace of the reopening plan, as I said, with business advocates. I think we should revisit that whole issue as well this morning. We're just off this very first weekend of, well, very limited freedom. It's like people are being let out of COVID jail, but they've only been given a weekend pass. And some people are continuing to urge caution when it comes to the pace of the reopening. And there are others who think we could and should speed things up a little bit because we're in this phase, step, stage, whatever they're calling it these days, for the next 3 weeks. And then we'll open things up a little bit more and we'll stay in that phase, step, stage for another 3 weeks. And then we'll open up things up a little bit more. There are some who think we could speed that up a little bit. 14 people in hospital, 3 in ICU. We could speed that up a little bit. And there are others, too, who think, look, the pandemic's pretty much over. Maybe this whole thing's been overblown from the start and we shouldn't have any restrictions at all. I'm not one of those people, but there are people who that's what they think. So I would certainly like to know what you think on these and a whole bunch of other issues. You know, that's why I ask you, how was your weekend and what did you do? First and foremost, you do anything exciting, David? David's a young guy. He's a lot younger than me. Did you go anywhere?
A lot younger. I had brunch on a patio.
You had brunch on
Saturday.
A patio, really?
I had a mimosa and I had some eggs and some sausage.
That sounds nice.
And I saw other human beings. It was wonderful.
Socialized. You socialized.
It was wonderful.
Yeah.
Just so
It's amazing what you take for granted, right?
It's
Isn't
crazy.
that amazing?
It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, first little taste of freedom in a while. So David enjoyed it. He had eggs on a patio. What about you? What was that like? Did you do anything? If so, what did you do? Where did you go? What did you see? Or was it just kind of another COVID weekend for you? We went for a drive and I had an ice cream cone. That's exciting in Rob Snow's world these days. I'm a wild and crazy guy.
Big weekend.
Yep. But I'd be curious to know. Jen was saying she looks at Reddit a lot. I don't do Reddit a lot. Do you Reddit? Do you do the Reddit
I'm
thing?
not on the Reddit thing, no.
I'm not big into the Reddit. She said, and you live near there, so you would probably know better than both of us, but that Elgin Street was hopping and people were dressed to the nines. Is that?
Yeah. People, a lot of
like
nice
making
dresses.
an event out of it,
The
right?
result of a lot of online shopping, I think, was on display.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So look, let's get into it. Talkback hour. You know, we do that every morning between 10 and 11, an hour of phone calls, opinions, debating, discussing whatever happens to be in the news. And it's Monday after the first weekend of freedom. Weekend pass from COVID jail. So if you did something that you haven't done in a while, like sit on a patio, have a meal, I'd like to know how that felt, how it went. And as well, 6 months. It's 6 months to the day. I didn't even realize that until just a few hours ago. You know what? It's been exactly 6 months of the vaccination program in Canada. 6 months. December 14th of last year was when the first shots went into the first arms, December 14th. And 6 months later, 12% of the Canadian population is fully vaccinated. 6 months later, 12%. That's it. 12%. The percentage of the Canadian population, no question, the percentage of the Canadian population with one dose, that has improved a lot. David gets his first shot today. Congratulations, David.
Thank
6
you.
months in. You have been so patient.
I'm excited.
The percentage of the population with one dose has improved a lot. Okay? But think about all the things we've had to put up with in order for that number to look as good as it does. Waiting 4 months between doses, mixing and matching second doses, begging India for vaccines, begging Joe Biden for vaccines, raiding the COVAX cupboard to get vaccines, and then the greatest insult of all, I think, extending the expiry date on vaccines. Sure. Why not? Why not do that? You've done everything else. So yes, the percentage of the population with at least one dose of vaccines has improved greatly in the last few months, but still 6 months to the day, 12% of the Canadian population can actually say it is fully vaccinated. Are you among them? Can you say that you are fully vaccinated? And why is that? Is it because of your age? Is it because of your occupation? Or is it because you're a Canadian who wasn't in Canada? You were living somewhere else. So how did that happen? How did you manage to be one of the lucky few? It's a Monday after a weekend of a little bit of freedom. And this is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
The food cupboard started about 25 years ago. Again, it was a very small operation in the basement of a church. And we have been expanding to the point where we needed to have a new facility. So in discussion with the city of Ottawa and Jan Harder, the local representative here, we came to this location, which is about 2,000 square feet, located in the Walter Baker Center. We've been here for about 2 years, and it is much better. It gives us a much broader opportunity to serve our clients better. It's a fairly affluent community in Barrhaven, so you wouldn't think that people would really need to have a food bank or a food cupboard. But people sometimes have a temporary loss of their job, maybe new immigrants or refugees to the community. Maybe there's been an injury in the family or something like a pandemic that causes people to run short of food during their monthly requirements. So we offer any clients who come and live in our catchment area the opportunity to pick up an order of food every 3 or 4 weeks. The need varies from time to time. We have expanded our offering to include quite a few perishables, eggs, milk, cheese, yogurt, vegetables, fruit. But people I think know that we need cans of beans and stuff as well too. One thing that we're consistently short of sometimes is personal hygiene products. You go to the grocery store, you buy your toothpaste and you buy your deodorant and shampoo there. People don't automatically think that to donate those kinds of things to a food cupboard. So we end up buying quite a few of those things from time to time. The pandemic has affected us like it has everybody. Initially, we had to stop the grocery store food donations so that we didn't have any risk of contamination and to have a significant number of volunteer work to be done in our facility. We have a storefront, so it's like a mini grocery store where you take a cart and you go around and pick out the things that you want. That doesn't work during the pandemic to maintain social distancing and so on. So what we have now is our clients can come in one at a time, they make an appointment, they stand behind a line, and they direct our volunteer to, I'd like Kellogg's cornflakes rather than Harvest Crunch, to pick the food that they would like off the shelves according to the allocation, depending on the size of their family. And then they take it out, load it into their vehicle or whatever, bring back the cart, we disinfect everything, and prepare for the next client. We are very blessed here in Barrhaven. We're a totally volunteer organization. So if you give a dollar to us, it goes to purchasing food or to provide some service to our clients.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's been a week since we started learning about the terrible news out of London, Ontario. A man accused of 4 counts of first-degree murder, 1 count of attempted murder, accused of running down an entire family. Police alleged a crime based purely on their Muslim faith. It's something that hits awfully close to home for our first guest this morning. Fariha Naqvi-Mohamed is with CityNews Montreal, wrote about her feelings recently in the Montreal Gazette, and joins me this morning here on City News Ottawa. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. Thank you for having me.
Well, I thank you. And what has this last week been like for you?
It's been awful. It's been terrible. I'm in Montreal, Not too long ago, just 4 years ago, we dealt with the aftermath of the Quebec City mosque shooting. And there's so much trauma from that this past week just hit us so incredibly hard. I had to take time off from work. A lot of my friends and family had to take time off from work. We're grieving. It's been awful.
Okay. How do you cope with that?
Just
as a family or as a community?
You know, it's interesting you say as a family. I've got 2 teenagers, and it's one of the most horrible things is having to sit the kids down and say, hey, guys, by the way, this happened. This is what took place. And the questions come up, well, why would someone do that? And these are questions we're all asking ourselves, right? So it's different. I mean, right, the Quebec City mosque attack happened in a mosque, and a lot of people were afraid for some time to go to the mosque to go pray. And I took self-defense classes that were geared towards Muslim women in the aftermath of that attack.
Wow.
And I felt...
They offer those?
They offer those.
Wow.
An organization, I believe out of Ottawa, Strong Orange Violence Protection. They offered us classes. And so I took those. But how do you prepare against going for a walk with your family around your neighborhood and being mowed down?
And you say that was kind of a nightly ritual in your family, right?
It was. Growing up, it wasn't even an option. It was just,
oh, really?
Supper's done, you wash up and we're out for a walk. And it was just something that we did, and it was beautiful, and I didn't realize just how important it was for my childhood. And it's something I do with my own family now with my kids. My kids like to go for a walk on their own in the evening. And if I'm being honest, not one of us has stepped out and gone for an evening walk since this happened.
You wrote in the Gazette last week, quote, I am among the many Muslims who have developed an irrational fear of going for a walk since we learned of this act of terror. But a week ago, I took some calls during my open line segment here during my program from a couple of people, Muslim, who said they're afraid too. So I don't know how irrational it is, or if it's like group irrationality. It doesn't seem all that irrational, I guess.
You're thinking twice about it. And I mean...
Yeah, you're thinking twice about it, yeah.
There's a pandemic, right? So what exactly are you going to do? I mean, here in Montreal, things are opening up more, which is great. But I mean, since last year, that's the one thing we've all had. We can all go for a walk in the evening or during the day. It's something you do as a family, and it's so wholesome. And to have that stripped away from us with this fear, and you really question, is it that irrational?
When you say, I am not okay, none of us should be okay. None of us should be okay. What do you mean?
This has impacted us not only, it's impacted me as a Muslim Canadian, but also just as for all Canadians. No one should be okay with this. The fact that any one family can be out for an evening walk and be mowed down, and 4 out of 5 lives lost. Nobody should be okay with that. This past weekend, I attended a rally, an anti-racism peaceful rally in my neck of the woods. And it was, last year we stood in solidarity with the Black community at that same rally. And, Black Lives Matter, we spoke about the murder of George Floyd. And this year, they started with a moment of silence for this family. And every single speaker referenced this family. And it was all communities coming together. It wasn't just the Muslim community, the Black community. It was all communities coming together.
Well, that's good. All right.
And we all spoke about how impacted we are. People of color, the Black community, the Indigenous community. How much more do we have to see and deal with before we see concrete change?
I have to ask you, because you are in Montreal, and it didn't take long, and in fact the Prime Minister was asked about it. We have condemnation of this atrocity in London, Ontario, but also in Quebec you have legislation like Bill 21, the secularism bill, which I have called on this radio show state-sponsored racism. And I'll continue to call it that. I'm wondering, in your experience as a resident living in the province of Quebec, do you think it's Islamophobia? Is it worse there, do you think, than other parts of the country? Just what's your sense of it?
Islamophobia is bad everywhere right now, but particularly in Quebec. And I've called Bill 21 a thing or two myself. It is, it's just awful. I've written about it extensively in the Montreal Gazette, and it's impacted family of mine, friends of mine, people that I know. People have had to move out of the province. Others there are several who had to remove their hijabs because they have to work. And when you've spent so many years investing in your education and you're told all of a sudden that you can't do what you've always dreamt of doing because of the way you choose to dress and honor your faith, that's wrong. There's no two ways about it. And so right now, Islamophobia is really bad in Quebec, but it's also really bad everywhere else.
Yeah, but disappointing when the Prime Minister, and I should say the other federal political leaders, are in lockstep with the Prime Minister. This is just not much leadership coming from Ottawa on that front federally. Yeah.
You know what? There was a lot that was said 4 years ago. I stood at the funerals of the Quebec City mosque shooting victims. I stood there in the arena, and I just maybe 20 feet away from the caskets. And I listened. I grieved. I listened to all the elected officials say all the right things and comfort us. And I had tears and I had goosebumps, and I thought maybe things will change. Maybe this horrible act will change our lives as Muslim Canadians. And it didn't. And then we saw the murder of the caretaker at the mosque in Toronto 9 months ago. And we thought, this is horrible. A caretaker was in front of the mosque, and a man came up to him and slit his throat. And it was motivated by hate, Islamophobia. And we thought maybe things will change now. And we didn't. So I'm not okay. None of us should be okay. I'm angry.
What would change look like?
Change would look like...
Substantive change.
Substantive change would look like actually dealing with the groups, known Islamophobic groups who are operating in plain sight that the police are aware of, but yet they continue to operate. We know what sort of stance they're very public in terms of, operating on social media and connecting on social media, and the police are aware of these groups. And yet they continue to operate. And what are we waiting for? I feel like we keep having this conversation, and that's why I was very clear in my column. I don't want thoughts and prayers. I really don't. I want change. I want concrete action. I want to be able to raise my children in a way that they can go for a walk as a family. We can go to the mosque without fear of somebody killing us based on our faith. It's just that simple.
Thank you for your time this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. Fariha Naqvi-Mohamed, City News Montreal video journalist and columnist with the Montreal Gazette. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 14th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 19 degrees. In Smith Falls, 17. And here's what's making news this hour. Not sure if it's the same bear as Stittsville's visitor this weekend, but police around Earl Mulligan after reporting a bear on the loose there. So keep that in mind if you're in that area of Barrhaven. The Route 171 bus has had to make a couple of detours due to that bear sighting. Another major player in COVID vaccines. This one will focus on middle and low-income countries to deliver its supply once it's approved. Novavax of the United States says its clinical trials are very promising, with 90% effectiveness against COVID and the variants. It's hoping to produce 100 million doses a month and start distribution in September. That supply will go a long way to solving an immediate problem after G7 countries promised just under 1 billion doses of vaccine to those countries. But health experts say they are still about 10 billion doses short. The 20-year-old man accused of 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 of attempted murder in the deaths of a Muslim family in London, Ontario, is due in court today. Police allege this suspect deliberately drove into the family as they were out for a walk a week ago Sunday. City News Time, 9:32. I'm Andrew Boyle. For news anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Firm.
Fair.
Fun.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM.
and 1310 AM.
These are some of the headlines that have been in the news media recently about drought. Drought in Ontario. Lack of rainfall in Ontario's forecast will exacerbate its drought. Food prices may jump if drought continues. Lack of rain prompts low water warnings. A summer for most, but drought looms. There's nothing you can do about it. Drought threatens crops across Canada. Now, I should say, David, my trusty producer David, called some farmers this weekend because we were going to do an interview with a big cash cropper in the Ottawa area and ask him about a drought. Are we having a drought? And they said, David,
Don't call it a drought.
don't call it a drought.
It's too early.
It's too early. Okay, so that's the view from the farmer. What about the senior climatologist at Environment Canada, David Phillips? Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, it's very nice to hear from you again, David. Are we in a drought?
Well, I think the farmer was wise. I mean, we bandy that word around as if, okay, if you get less precipitation than you normally would get for this time of the year, you say, oh, it's a drought. Well, no. I mean, I would call it dryness, but a drought is sort of in the eyes of the beholder. I mean, a water manager, a river person, a reservoir manager, a farmer growing canola or fruits or corn, they all have different definition as to when their particular responsibility begins to stress. And so I have seen some bowden dry conditions where backyard gardeners would call it a drought, but for some people it isn't. So my sense is I think it's really drought-like. It's clearly dry, and that is really something we've seen stretch from almost Vancouver Island right through to Bonavista. Vista. We're seeing in the southern part of Canada, we just haven't had as much precipitation as we normally would get by this time of the year. And at the same time, Rob, we've had more days with heat, which of course helps to abstract those little beads of water that exist in the soil or in the grass, and so therefore it makes it look like a drought. And certainly for gardeners, I mean, my gosh, the lawn is looking like it does in the dog days of summer, and that clearly is drought-like. I think the bottom line is we need more precipitation. We saw some plentiful rains came to the parts of the prairies last week. They were really suffering, probably worse than in Ontario. But, in Ottawa, I mean, you've had, in the last 14 days, 9 days have had rain. But, Rob, it's still only half of what you normally would get in that half month. So
I'm looking here. So far this month we've had 20 millimeters of rain.
Well, exactly. Now
but half of it came in one day. That's
right.
the thing.
And but a little bit of here and there. It's almost enough to keep the dust down and to wet the ground, but not we call it a rain day. I mean, if it rains for like 1 minute, no matter how much, we say, well, okay, it's a measurable amount, so therefore it's a rain day. But my gosh, it's half of what you normally would get, and that followed May, which was for certainly the Ottawa airport the driest May on record. I mean, a grand total of 13 millimeters of rain in May. You normally would get 80. So when you combine those two for May and up to June to now, that's about 25-28% of what you normally would get. At the same time, Rob, that demand for rain has been higher. I've counted 10 days where the temperature has been 29 degrees or more. You normally would have 2 or 3 of those. So we know that the demand for that rain has been excessive this year. I mean, a lot more than you normally would find. So it is, clearly we're in need of some rain. We might get some today, but I certainly think farmers are probably saying, well, and farmers, Rob, they do more with less moisture now than they used to. I mean, they're able to no-tilling, they are able to conserve the moisture that they do get, and some irrigation, of course, but it's not like the dirty 30s or other decades where, boy, it would be clearly a drought right now.
Yeah, the crops themselves are more resilient to extreme conditions.
They are.
As
I mean, it just shows you science, hybrid seeds, all of this can be, you can grow drought-resistant crops, and so therefore you're not seeing the stress as it would have been in other times. But clearly it's not something that's just the vegetation. We saw actually in May, I was hearing reports from people who were suffering from allergies. We saw a real come on to the vegetation in March and April. A couple of days were up to 20 degrees in March and April, and so things were going quickly, but then with less rain, there wasn't the rain to scrub the air, and so there's almost an overdose of pollen, and people were, sneezing and wheezing and gasping because of that. I think the days with rain in June have helped that to some degree, but certainly water levels, we're seeing more bushfires, and that's also a fallout from the fact that we're not seeing as much rain as we normally could. June,
we have fire bans. We have fire bans in effect, David, all over the place.
Okay. There you go. In the Ottawa Valley, that's clearly, and it begins people who can go camping, and that, well, hey, it affects them. It's not just farmers or gardeners. I mean, people who just enjoy the outdoors, and they're not able to do all the things they would like to do, and because of fire bans and things like that. So we do need some beneficial rains. We see today there's a good chance of showers. We had a bit of rain overnight, and we could see some later today. We get greater chance of having some rains. But a thunderstorm doesn't really do it. What you want, Rob, is a kind of an all-day rain, a one that rains for maybe 1 or 2 days, like a nice soaking, percolating kind of rain.
Something that really soaks the ground. Yeah.
Exactly. It's just this one you can get rain in your front yard, but not in your backyard with a kind of a thunderstorm. And Rob, it's from a seasonal point of view. We're calling for. I looked at the forecast out today for the next month or so, and it's calling for a warmer than normal summer in the Ottawa Valley. But precipitation, it's kind of below normal to near normal. So we need the rains, and I think this is the situation. The story is going to carry on through a good part of the summer. Is just the fact that we're behind every month since January has been below normal precipitation. So I think it's beginning to show wear and tear, where by this time you really haven't had those really hot days to show the kind of drought-like conditions.
Yeah. So it is dry. I mean, are we going to call it a drought? Well, not just yet, but it's dry. No doubt it's dry. And if it's dry, it sounds as though, David, we're not alone.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's right. I mean, it's a situation. I think it's like if I had a headline this year for, the big weather impact, I'd say Canada dry. Really, from Vancouver Island. Now, it's improved greatly the last week or so. There were some almost $1 billion rains that came to Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and so that's really helped the situation there. But boy, I mean, the Maritimes drought is not even spoken of in Maritimes, but they're talking about that, the fact that precipitation is down. So we're just seeing the lack of kind of weather systems that are, it's almost as if nature's forgotten how to rain in parts of southern Canada. But the situation has improved, as I say, out west, at least in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba. I think the forest fire situation it bears watching, particularly, of course, in British Columbia and Alberta. But I just don't think the situation is going to be corrected with a one-day thunderstorm. I think this is where we've been in the long run, has been below, and I think we need just a good week before we get to holiday season. Maybe June, if we could just have 1 week of nothing but kind of wet weather, that would be good. Of course, always ideally, Rob, to rain at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yes, that would be perfect. That would be perfect.
Yes.
David, always great to have you with us.
Okay,
Thank
Rob,
you so much.
Thank you so much.
David
Bye-bye.
Phillips, senior climatologist with Environment Canada. Just looking at some of the rainfall totals. So back in April, kind of an average April showers, we had about 60 millimeters of rain. We had some snow days, too. We had about 5 centimeters of snow for the month. So let's say 60, 65 millimeters of precipitation, total precipitation. And then we hit May, and it just dried up. It was the driest May in 100 years, so some of the news reports for Ottawa. 13 millimeters of rain for the entire month of May. And as David mentioned, so far, pretty dry. We've had rain many days. How many days did he say? Let me see here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7 rain days so far. So half the days it has rained, but some it has been what we call trace precipitation. And one day we had 11 millimeters of rain. Back on the 3rd of June, we had 11 millimeters of rain. We've had 20 millimeters all month. And, you see they're calling for water conservation. You don't be running the sprinkler and total fire bans. So, yeah, dry. He's not ready to use the word drought yet. I don't know if it lasts much longer. It's going to be very reminiscent of, I wish I could remember that dry summer that we had many years ago, because I can remember farmers organizing fundraisers because entire crop yields were going to be wiped out. And I have some friends who are organizers of the Navan Fair, and it had been dry bone dry all summer, a real honest-to-goodness summertime drought in Ottawa until the weekend of the Navan Fair. The Navan Fair opened on a Friday, and I swear to you, it did not stop raining until they closed everything down on Sunday and left town. I think it was the only weekend that they had of rain for the entire summer. It was quite something. But David Phillips not willing to call it a drought yet. Yeah, it's dry. 2016. Thank you, David. Thank you. 2016. My gosh. Okay, 9:44 here on the Rob Snow Show. When we come back, Bibi gone after 12 years, but gone for good. We'll talk Israeli politics when we come back with Adir Krafman, Associate Director of Communications and Analytics at the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs, on the Rob Snow Show on City News.
I wanted to give gifts to my volunteers, so I started making, I knew this is a skill I had, so I made a chocolate that had culture, a cultural based with a teaching. Because culture here is not just a little part, it's the large part. It's the fundamental part of our organization. So then we started doing, just little programs, and we sell a few at a fair. And then we started getting contracts. People were starting to enjoy the chocolates, and started getting more and more contracts all across Canada. Then we decided to become a social enterprise, and we were able to create 2 jobs. And Val is one of our chocolatiers, very talented. We were able to help her with employment.
We started just with a little bit in the kitchen, doing a little bit of chocolate together, and next thing, it's just kind of taken off. And it's great because I love to be creative, and we get to create a lot and make up stuff, and it's just I just love it. It's just great that we get to make money back for Wabano, and it's helping me out, and we're helping just everybody out, Wabano and everything.
We met a very socially conscious business owner being around town, and we decided to partner, because beans and chocolate, coffee and chocolate are sort of created the same way, and there's and they're very one origin bean, so it was a good pairing together, and it's been a fantastic partnership for both of us.
I was fortunate enough to get introduced to Purat, the head of Wabano Fine Chocolates, through a local networking group. And I was completely intrigued by the social enterprise that she was running, and then I looked at what we were doing, trying to support local business and supporting local communities, and it was a perfect match, and it's been fantastic ever since.
We make every batch by hand. We temper it by hand to get to the consistency it needs to be to make a good chocolate. And one of the best, also wonderful things we did, we've connected with Ed, with being around town, and our coffee bars have been an amazing hit. So we're really excited about the connection with our coffee.
Community opinion.
The Rob Snow Show returns
On Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
Israelis this morning woke up to a new government and a new prime minister. His name is not Benjamin Netanyahu. What a saga this has been, Israeli politics. Adir Krafman is here to walk us through it. He's Associate Director at the Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. Welcome back.
Good morning, and thanks so much for having me on.
It's a great pleasure. So, what happened to Benjamin Netanyahu? Why is he no longer the leader of Israel?
So Benjamin Netanyahu, after 12 consecutive years in power, and this is not actually the first time that he was prime minister. He's been the longest-serving prime minister of Israel. He stepped down yesterday after the parliament elected a new leader and formed a new coalition. And this is after 4 rounds of elections that sort of spun the country out of control.
In 2 years, 4 elections in 2 years, right?
Four elections in 2 years. And I think looking at how this coalition government looks like and the different parties that make up the new government, you can tell that there is sort of a different energy to Israel's parliament, a different intention to focus on what brings the country together rather than trying to pull it into different, extreme directions. You have parties from the right, from the left, religious, secular, Orthodox, Islamist parties, a party led by an LGBT man, all coming together to say we've tried to quote unquote win elections for our side, our political base. That hasn't worked. We need to move forward. Let's look at what brings us together rather than what tears us apart. And
it seems what brings them together is they wanted to get rid of Benjamin Netanyahu. It almost,
That's right.
I mean, it almost seems we might not
agree
agree on much, but we agree he's got to go. Is that fair enough? Or
that's, I mean, yes. I think there's a growing sense in Israel that a change of leadership was necessary, and I think when you look at different countries, for example, in the U.S., you have term limits on the number of years that a president can serve. In parliamentary systems like the ones we have in Canada and in the United Kingdom and also in Israel, but that's not the case. But after so many years, I think there was a feeling of change that was necessary. But there's so much more that this government can agree on other than just ousting Netanyahu, right? They released their coalition documents just earlier this week. They'll be working to strengthen consensus issues around Israel's security, the environment, repairing the economy after the coronavirus pandemic, working to support the Bedouin community, the Arab Bedouin community in the south of Israel, who have traditionally been a nomadic people who've moved sort of from place to place. But in a modern state, they need to have access to water and education and services and so on. I think that we're going to see less and less drama coming out of Israel in the coming months, and more, calm professionalism, working on the issues that affect people's day-to-day lives more than sort of the political big picture things that we're used to hearing out of Israel.
Okay. So the new prime minister is Naftali Bennett?
That's right.
Tell me about him.
So the new prime minister is Naftali Bennett. He comes from the sort of religious Zionist sector. He also was big in high tech for many years. He is the first prime minister of Israel that actually wears a yarmulke or a kippah. Israel was founded by very secular, social. You couldn't even say socialist leaders, and this is the first time that somebody from a somewhat religious background is the prime minister. He is very right of center, very hawkish on Israel's relations with the Palestinians and the possibilities for peace. He's very skeptical about that. But at the same time, like I said before, he's sort of surrounded by this mosaic of parties, and because the coalition is so slim, he has to find a way to please everybody, all of his coalition partners. And if one of those partners leaves, then the whole government falls apart. So they really have to focus on putting their personal political preferences aside and looking at the sort of base consensus level issues.
Yes, well, to underscore how fragile this coalition may be, the vote in the Knesset was 60 to 59.
That's right.
Right, by one vote. But nevertheless, they passed it. So the agreement is, under the coalition agreement, that Bennett would be the prime minister for 2 years, and then Yair Lapid would take over.
That's right. So
Who is that?
I think what the coalition sort of has two sides to it. So they internally split themselves up into a sort of a right-wing flank and a left-wing flank. And in order to achieve some sort of parity so that both sides feel that they have sort of veto power on the things that are sort of that would go too far for them for the other side to push forward, they have sort of two leaders in the coalition. So one is Naftali Bennett, who will serve prime minister first, and then after a certain period, it will switch over to Yair Lapid, who actually had almost 3 times as many seats as he did. But in order to bring the coalition together, Yair Lapid gave up on being prime minister first, and allowed the new government to be formed. So he is from the Yesh Atid party, which is more of a secular left of center party, still on the capitalist spectrum, I would say, but much more left wing than Naftali Bennett's Yamina. And the real challenge is for them to be able to find a way to work together and put their differences aside. And put their personal ambitions aside and find a way to communicate to their political base and to their main constituents, and demonstrate to them that even though they made really painful concessions, they had in their political campaigns, they promised certain things that now they will never be able to achieve. So they'll have to be able to really convince their voters that they made the right choice in voting for them and in voting for parties that said that they will oust Netanyahu.
Okay. Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel for 12 years. No individual has held that office longer in Israel than Benjamin Netanyahu. He said to his supporters, if it is destined for us, quote, if it is destined for us to be in the opposition, we will do it with our back straight until we topple this dangerous government and return to lead the country, end quote. A lot of people are talking like this is the end of Benjamin Netanyahu's political career. What do you think?
Look, Benjamin Netanyahu, I think, is, regardless of what one thinks about his political position and what he's done or accomplished in the country, I think he is one of the most adept political navigators in Israel's political environment, and he always finds a way to stay relevant, to stay in power until recently. And so I wouldn't say that he necessarily has finished his career, but I will look at two things. One is that his criminal trial is still ongoing.
Yes.
So a lot of the pressure on him personally to stay in power and remain in power to form government is that he can somehow find a way to maneuver around the Justice Ministry in order to avoid facing his trials. And so that's not the case, but he's going to have to spend a lot of time dealing with his criminal trial, which might prevent him from having all the energy to be as strong of an opposition leader. And the second is that the Likud is a primary-led party. So that means that every once in a while they need to have primary elections to choose their leaderships. And there are many members of Knesset from the Likud party who are quite frustrated that they are now sitting in the opposition for the sole reason that they refuse to reject Netanyahu. So while the coalition the process to create a coalition was going on, if Netanyahu would have stepped aside and let somebody else from his own party take leadership, then it's more than likely that Likud would have stayed in power, and that the other sort of right of center parties, including Naftali Bennett, would have agreed to be in a coalition with Likud. But because the consensus around all of the smaller parties that it's time to replace Netanyahu, and Netanyahu refused to step down, they formed the Change Coalition. So there's a lot of internal pressure right now inside the Likud to replace Netanyahu, to say thank you, you've served our country and our party, but it's time to find new leadership because this time around you weren't able to lead us to victory. And it will start, it'll start small, it will start subtle, but the dog-eat-dog internal battle on the next leadership of the Likud has already started.
Thank you, Mr. Krafman. It's always fascinating to watch it unfold in Israel. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye. Adir Krafman, Associate Director, Center for Israel and Jewish Affairs. Talkback Hour. When we come back, 750-1310 on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
ET 101.1 FM in Smith Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 14th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa, 19 degrees. In Smith Falls, 17. And here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. A black bear has forced the detour of the 171 bus. People in Barhaven told to be on the lookout. That bear spotted around the Earl Mulligan Drive area. The tweet from OC Transpo simply reads, "Detour, Route 171, both directions in the area of Woodruff and Earl Mulligan due to a bear." The latest COVID-19 numbers are out in the province for today. 447 new cases, 28 of them in Ottawa, 1 in Renfrew, 1 in Eastern Ontario. No new cases today in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. These numbers come from just over 13,500 tests that were completed, with a positivity rate at 2.8%. The province also reporting 4 more deaths. City News time, 10:02. The Ottawa Red Blacks one step closer to a return to play this summer, still no closer to having fans in the stands. The provincial government has released a framework for professional and amateur sport leagues to play. It comes with stringent public health and safety protocols. Minister of Heritage, Sport, Tourism and Culture, Lisa MacLeod, says it's due to a much more promising snapshot of the COVID-19 situation.
A lot of work has gone into this. The conditions in March changed rapidly underneath our feet, so we were not able to accelerate it at that time. But today things have changed. Our case counts are much lower. Many more people have vaccines, and we believe we've got the framework in place that will allow us to greenlight these leagues.
Now, she says this means teams can take part in training camp, but there is no timeline on when fans will be admitted into stadiums, although she admits that will likely be a gradual return. Vaccine maker Novavax says a large late-stage study in the United States and Mexico shows its shot is highly effective against COVID-19 and also protects against variants. The Maryland-based company says it plans to seek authorization for the shot in the United States, Europe, and elsewhere by the end of September. They'll be able to produce up to 100 million doses a month by then. The federal government says effective immediately, any First Nation, Inuit, or Métis person can apply to reclaim their name on passports and other government documents. The Citizenship Minister, Marco Mendicino, says the new policy goes beyond a call to action number 17 from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission final report. It also includes permanent resident cards and citizenship certificates.
Effective immediately, Indigenous individuals can now apply to reclaim their names as written on passports and other identity documents.
Now, many Indigenous children had their names wiped off documents when they were taken from their families and forced into residential schools. City News time at 10:04. Dogs in Renfrew County getting a new leash on life after renovations at the Pembroke Animal Centre. In 2017, the centre moved from Petawawa to Pembroke, but the new space didn't have an area specifically for dogs. As a result, any dog that came to the location on Woodcrest Drive would be sent out to other SPCA centres for adoption. Now the centre has capacity to help the community rehoming dogs. I'm Andrew Boyle. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
What did you do this weekend? Did you take advantage of your newfound freedom? Go somewhere exciting? Do something you haven't done in a while? I want to talk about the pandemic, where we are with COVID-19, where we are with the reopening, with your help here on a Monday morning after the first weekend of reopening here in Ottawa at 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. That and a few other things. Do you think the lifting of restrictions can be accelerated. It's supposed to go in these 3-week stages, phases, steps, whatever they're calling. We're in this stage, phase, or step for the next 3 weeks. And then we're on to phase, step, stage 2. And then we'll stay there for another 3 weeks. And then it's hopefully the final stage, step, or phase. Hopefully the last one. Hopefully the last one. Do you think we can move things up, move things a little bit faster than that, than these 3-week increments? What do you think? 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. Or do you like this cautious approach? And we're doing this out of an abundance of caution. You know, when this is all over, I hope I never have to hear that turn of phrase again. An abundance of caution. Out of an abundance of caution. Do you like, but nevertheless, do you like the cautious approach? Or, you know, maybe you're one of those wild and crazy folks, because I know you're out there. Do you think we should just end all restrictions and party like it's 1999? What do you think? What do you think? So let's talk about restrictions and phases and kind of the time frame that we've been dealt here by the Ford government. That's one thing I want to talk about this morning. Again, with your help at 750-1310. Vaccines. It's been 6 months to the day. 6 months ago today, the vaccination program began in Canada, December 14th, 2020. This is June 14th, 2020. So after 6 months, and look, the percentage of the population with one dose, I get it, that number is way up. Congratulations, you know, have a parade, whatever. The fact is, 6 months later, a mere 12% of the Canadian population can say it is fully vaccinated, has actually had 2 doses of a 2-dose vaccine, and is fully vaccinated. But that being said, are you among them? And if you are one of the lucky few, because you do realize how lucky you are, if so, how did that happen? How is it that you have 2 doses and I only have 1? How is it that you have 2 doses and David has none? David gets his first shot. First shot, 6 months. 6 months. Talk about being at the back of the line. 6 months to get 1 shot of vaccine. Anyway, look, how did it happen? Is it because of your age? Is it because of your job? Is it because you went to the United States? You winter in the United States, in Florida for the winter. Maybe that's all there is to it, right? You know, our American friends, they're not waiting 4 months between doses. So there you go. How was your first weekend of freedom? I would like to spend some time living vicariously through you this morning. I live a rather quiet and sheltered life. Our big thing this weekend was to go for a nice long drive and stop for an ice cream cone, okay? Ice cream cone spells excitement in Rob Snow's world. That's kind of where I am in my life right now. And you know what? I'm totally okay with that. But according to the Reddit, downtown Ottawa, the patios of downtown Ottawa, a hopping place to be this weekend. That's according to Reddit. Now, Reddit is not real life, but I would like to know any truth to that. Any truth to that? Okay, 750-1310. How was your weekend? What were you up to? Did you do anything exciting? Anything you haven't done in a while? If so, I'd like to hear about it, because we are slowly reopening Ontario, and I mean slowly reopening Ontario, the latest version of Doug Ford's grand reopening. And you have to think about where Doug Ford is right now politically. When it comes to the reopening, he has to get this one right. Or not only will people be thinking grand reopening when they think of Doug Ford, they're also going to be thinking about Ontario, grand reopening and under new management. Because let's face it, Ford's not the most popular premier in Canada these days. Not even, I don't even think making endearing videos of him making a cheesecake, I don't even think that would work for him anymore. Because people just want their lives back. So if this latest reopening plan backfires, you just know there is going to be heck to pay in Ford Nation. So, weekend reopening. Can we accelerate the reopening? 12% of the Canadian population is fully vaccinated. What are your thoughts on that? Let's get into it all here on the Talkback Hour. Right to the phones we go. Manny in Ottawa. Good morning, Manny.
Good morning, Rob.
First call of the week. There you go. Awesome.
Rob, let's play this hypothetical game.
All right. Okay.
Let's assume when we started to flatten the curve, what we were told in March of last year, we need 2 weeks so we don't have excessive hospitalization and people die because we can't treat them. So let's shut it down for 2 weeks.
Save the healthcare system. Yep.
Right. That's how we started.
Yep.
If I had said to you or asked any expert or any politician, let's say in April of 2020, and said, tomorrow I could snap my fingers now, and tomorrow we will have a vaccine that is 95% effective, and I will have 50 to 60% that have, or 60% that have one shot and about 18% that have two shots. What would happen if I snap my fingers? Every doctor and every politician would say, well, if that were the case, we would go right back to normality and right back to where we were in 2019 because we have solved the problem by taking 60% of the population out of the healthcare system that would otherwise be required.
Yep. Plus, there's a situation in the healthcare system right now, in Ottawa anyway.
Right.
14 people in the hospital, 3 people in ICU.
Yeah, and can you imagine, Rob, I mean, what Rob Ford has done is I think he's turned his back on every conservative. I hope he never sees another day in office.
Ooh.
But I can tell you that there are people that are still literally suffering to open their business, and they have to wait an arbitrary date of July something to get their businesses open when the hospitals are empty and the cases are at all-time low, and it's just an arbitrary measure. Rob, it's like, I'll give you a great example. There's DNA that proves that the guilty person did not commit the crime, and the judge says, well, we'll look at that in about 30, 40 days while he's in jail. You've got to return to freedoms as soon as you possibly can, and this fool is not doing it.
All right.
And I hope he will.
You think the situation in the healthcare system, the situation with vaccines is exculpatory evidence, Manny?
Absolutely.
And we should all be released from COVID jail.
Well, I mean, if it's not, it just makes a mockery of everything.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, all right.
Good point, Manny. Thank you. Yeah, I like the way he framed it. He framed it very well, actually. Yep. You know why? Because he's a lawyer. That's why. 10:14. Rob Snow Show on City News.
This hour of the Rob Snow Show is brought.
Well, we're celebrating our 43rd year. It's still family operated. We're in our second generation. We, pre-COVID, we're at about 1,000 employees. We have 20 stores from coast to coast in Canada. We do our own manufacturing. Right here in Ottawa, we have about 160 people that support Canadian-made manufacturing in addition to our retail stores. Taking you back to mid-March and the impact of the pandemic on Lee Valley. Lee Valley was actually in a tough spot. We had just launched our website a few months prior to that, and we were going through, a fairly typical deployment dive where your customers retract as they adjust to the website. And then under stress already, this pandemic hit. And in the early days, it was pretty critical. It hit us really hard. Stores were closed. We weren't sure what to do, so we had to go right into survival mode. As a result, we had to take our workforce almost back to half of where we were at because the stores were closed, and with 20 stores, that's a big retail workforce. But what we were able to do pretty quickly, with a little luck, being essential, selling tools and hardware, we were able to adjust our business model, with respect to the stores and our fulfillment operation. That new website that we were under stress worked out well for us because as the world was under house arrest, people were looking to online, and the conversion to our online sales in some cases almost doubled. And we saw tremendous interest in things to do at home. Where we were lucky once again and fortunate is that our product offering. Work at home tools, craft, hobbies, backyard, container gardening, you name it. What we sold was really appealing to people. With respect to our stores, Lee Valley, a rare unknown fact was that we were one of the pioneers of curbside pickup. We've been doing it for 25 years. Pretty much dove right into the application to help with the contactless shopping right away. We took the application, and it's not like a Apple application where you have to download it to your phone and clutter up your phone. This is literally resides right on our website. So you walk into our store with your phone, you pull up our website, and there's a little scan icon. You just tap that, select your store, off you go. You go through the showroom, you scan product, you can read more about it, you can check the on hand, you can add it to your cart, continue to shop, and when you're ready, you just submit it to the counter. We'll go pick it for you. We'll call out your name, we'll check you out, send you on your way. You haven't touched anything. It's completely safe, and it's using a device you're comfortable with and a website that you're familiar with. Amazingly, 9 out of 10 people that used it loved it and want to use it again.
Just past the first weekend of freedom, what were you up to? I'll live vicariously through you. Do you think the lifting of restrictions should be accelerated? We're in this stage for 3 weeks, and then we go to the next stage, and we stay there for another 3 weeks, and then we go to the next stage. Or should we just keep it the way it is, the cautious approach, or should we just end all restrictions? Okay. Locally here, 14 people in hospital, 3 people in ICU. And on vaccines, 6 months. Okay, 6 months ago today, the vaccination program began in Canada. 6 months later, 12% of the Canadian population is fully vaccinated. But are you among them? And if so, how did that happen? How did that happen? You are so lucky. You are one of the lucky few. Vince, Ottawa. Good morning, Vince. You're on City News.
Good morning, Ed. I'm a hairdresser for 30 years, and I've owned my own business. And the way they did this reopening, I'm quite upset about it because you can sit on a patio with 4 different people and, 4 or 5 feet apart from another table, and you can't get a haircut with a mask on. And it doesn't make any sense the way they open the business. I'm actually scared that we might not be able to open up when we're supposed to open in July because the cases might go up. Because downtown this weekend, just driving by, and it was crazy. Yeah. Everywhere you go, patios are full everywhere.
Yes, they were. Yeah, patios, beaches, parks. Take your pick.
And the beaches were. It's a zoo.
Yeah.
And like I said before, we wear masks. You wear a mask, and it's such an important thing for people to have their hair done. It's grooming for people to have their nails done. That people are diabetic that can't get their feet done. It doesn't make sense the way they opened up the economy right now. I mean,
so as I understand it, for hairstylists, Vince, it's supposed to be you're in the second phase, right? So you have to wait another 3 weeks, right?
That's right.
But even then, you're only allowed to have 15% capacity. 15%.
Right now. You have people that have been having a haircut 3 months, 4 months.
Yeah.
And you know what's happening right now? They're pushing the underground world. So people are getting haircuts at home. People are getting haircuts privately, or they're going to Gatineau getting haircuts.
Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, when we had the first lockdown, it was really crucial. I wasn't ready for it at all.
Right.
Second one, I was more ready for it.
Okay.
Now, the third lockdown, because we were closed in February, we reopened in February after Valentine's, we were super busy. Now, we don't qualify for the help from the government because we made too much money in February when we opened up after 2 months. So right now, not just myself, a lot of colleagues that have hair salons or another business are suffering because we have no money coming in from the government at all. And a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah. No money at all.
Don't know that.
Yeah.
I haven't paid my rent in 3 months.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't paid my taxes for the business. If I go to pay take whatever money I have left in the business and not be able to pay myself, then I'm going to screw myself in my own credit. So then my own personal credit gets shot. Trying to apply for credit after that, it's going to be ruined. So it's really frustrating. It's really frustrating. I was listening to you this morning. I said, you know what? Let me get on there. I got to talk to you guys and let the people, just even government people, anybody that's working doesn't understand how hard it is for us. You know, I care. I care for my clients. I care for my friends. They all need haircuts. It's not because they got to look at. They feel good. I'm a gentleman. I have no hair. I'm a hairdresser. Yes, I have no hair. But you know what? I shave every day. I want to make sure I look good for
Sure.
whoever I look
People want to look nice.
And feel good.
Yeah.
It's a mental health thing.
Absolutely. Sure. Yeah.
And it's 100% safety that you're wearing a mask. I'm wearing a mask. I'm vaccinated. I got my 2 shots already.
Oh, good for you.
And I'm lucky because my mom lives in a retirement home, so that's how I got my shot.
Okay. Yeah.
But it's beyond. It worries me right now that we might not be able to open up because how crazy it is downtown, everywhere, not just Ottawa.
You know, it's very interesting. I just said to David, the producer, because I remember it was about a year ago. There were stories about basically black market haircuts, right? People
They're pushing it. Yeah. They're pushing it to the black market right now.
So I said to David, look on Kijiji and see what you can come up with. And he's found mobile barber, women's haircuts and styles, mobile cuts, mobile barber, satisfaction, all on Kijiji. Seven ads on Kijiji right now in Ottawa.
Why can't I not put a chair outside my shop? I own New York Hair Salon. Why can't I put a chair outside my shop and I have a mask on? You have a mask on and I can't cut your hair. You tell me why I can't do that.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah. Okay, Vince. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Yeah. Yeah. I feel so sorry for them. They have been closed more than they've been open, and it's 6 months into the year. In Barrhaven, Carol, good morning.
Hi there.
Hi, Carol. Good morning. You're on the air.
I just want to vent about vaccines.
Go right ahead. Yes. Yeah.
Who's got their second shot?
Yeah.
Well, good luck, Ottawa.
Okay.
I was thrilled to hear that they moved up the second shot availability for AZ to 8 weeks.
Yep.
Last week, I tried on the portal. Every day, no appointments available. Actually, Thursday came up and there was appointments in Rockland and Embrun. Not great. So today, Monday, first day of the 8-week wait, and I checked 3 pharmacies. I actually went into them. One had supply, and the other 2 did not. And the one that had supply was only calling back the people that got their first shot there.
Oh, okay. So if you didn't get your first shot there, you're out of luck then, right? Yeah. Okay.
On the portal, it was an hour wait. Just be told no appointments available.
Yeah.
And all weekend I was watching the tweets from vaccine hunters, and down in the GTA, they are going nuts. Pop-ups, vaccine centers, just all over the place. I understand the need.
Yes.
But is that where the whole supply for Ontario is going?
I don't know. Plus, this is the same sort of thing that we were dealing with months ago. I mean, who has the time to do this?
Well, fortunately,
imagine. But you did you say you're retired, Carol?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have the time, right?
But the average Joe is trying to work at home.
Yeah, going to work, or their children are at home doing online school or whatever. Who has the time to spend 3-4 hours on the internet and then calling pharmacies and waiting for callbacks, and maybe you get a callback, you're going to hop in the car, drive to Arnprior. I got people call me. I drove to Kingston to get a shot. It's all kinds of ridiculousness sometimes, right? Very time consuming. Yeah. Incredibly frustrating. Yeah,
I want us all to get our second shot, but where's the supply? Where's the availability?
Yeah, and when I heard this thing, we're going to shorten the wait time for the AstraZeneca dose for the second shot. I thought to myself, the minute I heard that, I thought to myself, yeah, if you can find a dose somewhere.
Exactly.
Of AstraZeneca.
Well, initially I was thrilled to hear that, and then reality kicks in, and it's like, well, whatever.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Not going to get it any sooner.
Yeah. Thank you, Carol. Yeah. I think you highlighted it perfectly. Some of the frustration that's out there. Lindsay Ashton, good morning. You're on City News.
Good morning.
Morning, Lindsay.
I'm feeling pretty thankful.
You are?
I have to say.
All right.
Yes.
You must be fully vaccinated, are you?
I am, yes. I just got my second one on Friday.
Lucky Lindsay. See, we found one. Yeah. What do you do for a living? Healthcare worker. Okay.
Yes, personal support worker.
Personal support worker. Well, God bless you. There you go. You deserve it then.
Well, it's been a long time coming, so thankful is an understatement. But, last year I was working pharmacy, and we had to go through the shortages of the flu shot, and everyone wanted it all of a sudden. And always going through the shortages because the government would pull it back. But then I got back into the personal side of personal support and went to retirement home, so I got to see the shortages there, and then the fast track to the shot because we needed it.
Yep. So you were among probably some of the first to get a shot then, right? If you were, when did you get your first shot?
I got it mid-February.
Oh, mid-February, yeah, okay.
And I only just got my second shot. It was really pushing it that 4 months wait. Yeah.
When did you get your second, do you figure?
I just got it on Friday. And my
just
husband
this past
was
Friday.
Okay. Yeah, and my husband got his first. So I was really happy he got to get his first one.
Well, that's good. That's good.
So, yeah.
Well, 88% of the rest of us don't have it yet. And my producer, David, is only getting his first shot today. Can you imagine?
Well, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And, I still haven't seen my family. My parents, they moved to Barrie, and I haven't seen them since September. So it's been a long time.
Yeah, I'm right there with you, Lindsay, on that one.
Not going out to the bars and trying to stay safe and protect the people around us still.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. I do feel good for you. I'm a little envious, but
we're going to get there.
No, but considering what you do for a living, it's completely understandable. And thank you for doing that. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for taking my call.
Yeah, pleasure. That's halftime. Wow, it's flying by this morning. This is the Talkback Hour. We're talking about the itty-bitty, teeny-weeny taste of freedom that everybody enjoyed this weekend. And we're talking about the vaccination program. 6 months in. This is the Rob Snow Show on City News.
This hour of the Rob Snow Show. news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 14th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, 20 degrees, and here's what's making news this hour. A black bear on the loose in Barrhaven has temporarily closed a section of Earl Mulligan, rerouting the 171 OC Transpo bus. Police have the detour set up between Woodruff and Woodgate. It's not known how long the detour will be in place. People advise you to avoid that area. The man charged in the deaths of 4 members of a Muslim family in London, Ontario, has had charges upgraded. The Crown says Nathaniel Veltman's 4 counts of first-degree murder constitute an act of terrorism. Prosecutors upgrading the charges under Section 83 of the Criminal Code. Veltman also facing 1 count of attempted murder due to terrorism activity. The latest COVID-19 numbers for the province show 447 new cases today in Ontario. 28 of these are in Ottawa, 1 in Eastern Ontario, 1 in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. There are no new cases today in Renfrew. Make that 1 in Renfrew, none in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. There are also 4 more deaths reported today in Ontario. Pro and amateur sport teams will be able to start training camps. It means the Red Blacks can begin prepping for the upcoming CFL season. However, the province says there is no timeline right now to allow fans into stands. City News Time 10:32. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
Talk back.
Hello. On the Rob Snow Show. The phone lines are open at 613-750-1310.
Now, the Rob Snow Show continues.
How was your weekend? The weekend of freedom. Did you take advantage of your little taste of freedom? David did. He, as mentioned, David went for brunch. Okay. Haven't been out for brunch. When was the last time you were out for brunch, do you figure, Dave?
Oh, well, we were talking
was it
about
even
that
in 2021.
We were talking about that at brunch. It was post-second wave, pre-stay-at-home order. We were open for like 3 weeks there.
Okay.
At the end of March. We went out then. And that was it.
Yeah. The whiplash era, we call that. Yeah. Do you think the lifting of restrictions should be accelerated as it goes in these 3-week stages? We're in this stage for 3 weeks and then on to the next stage, wait for another 3 weeks and then the final stage. Or do you like this cautious approach from Doug Ford? Or should we end all restrictions? It's like wide open, man. Let's go wide open. I would just remind you the current situation with healthcare in Ottawa anyway. According to Ottawa Public Health COVID-19 dashboard, 14 people in hospital, 3 people in ICU. In Ottawa, 14 people in hospital, 3 people in the ICU. And on vaccines, it's been 6 months. 6 months ago today, the vaccination program began in Canada. And now, 6 months later, 12% of the Canadian population can say it is fully vaccinated. Fully vaccinated. But are you among them? And if so, how did that happen? Is it because of your age? Is it because of your job? Lindsay, it was because of Lindsay's job. She's a personal support worker. Is it because you went to the United States and you were there for the winter? So you had your first dose in no time flat and you had your second dose 3 weeks later. Not 4 months later. 750-1310, 750-1310, 613-750-1310. What was it like? I'd be curious to know what it was like this weekend and if it was madness and mayhem and bedlam out there in Ottawa, excitement and enthusiasm, or was it just kind of another pandemic weekend? I had an ice cream cone. That was our great adventure. It was a large ice cream cone. Okay, because you know me, Dave, I live on the wild side.
What kind of ice cream?
Okay, the vanilla soft serve.
Ooh.
Yeah. But what? See why I like to live vicariously through other people? Ooh, vanilla. How exciting. 750-1310, 750-1310. Yeah. And accelerating the reopening. This phase, stage, step, whatever they're calling it now, phase 1, part 1, step 1, stage 1. It's the first one, right? And now we have to wait 3 weeks before we go on to the next phase, stage, or step. And then we hit the pause button again before going on to the hopefully final phase, which is basically supposed to be back to normal and everything can be open, should be open with very limited exceptions. So I guess, I don't know, 6 weeks. We're kind of stuck waiting for another 6 weeks, the end of July, basically, the end of July. And again, 34 cases yesterday, 28 today locally, 0 deaths reported yesterday. I don't think 4 deaths province-wide reported today, province-wide. 14 people in Ottawa hospitals, 3 people in ICU in Ottawa hospitals. That was as of yesterday. And the so-called R number, the rate of reproduction of the virus, you know, the medical scientists love it when that number is below 1. And according to Ottawa Public Health, I looked it up this morning, the R number is below 1. And it has been below 1 for quite some time now. So that is very good news. Because the experts have told us for the better part of the last year and a half that as long as the R number is above 1, it's bad. Because it means the virus is still being passed from one person to another, to another, to another, to another. But Ottawa Public Health, for the last day that data is available, has 3 values in there for R numbers, and they are 0.7, 0.9, and 0.8. But the most important fact is that it's below 1. But anyway, on vaccines, on the timeline for reopening, let's get back to the phone calls. White Lake. Sam, good morning. You're on the City News.
Hi, Rob.
Hi, Sam.
You know, I listened this morning where we can book within the 8 weeks. And last week I was booked for my second vaccine, and they called me the day before saying, oh, you're within 11 weeks, so you're only at 60%. You'll have to sign a government waiver. This way, unless you wait for this Friday, which I'm rescheduled, then your protection will be more 80%. So I'm a little perplexed when I listened this morning, and, you know, you just can't trust these people. Nobody's saying the
Can't
same
trust.
thing.
Who's these people? Who
Well, it's government. Why would they tell me on the phone, oh, no, you're still a bit early by a week because your protection level is at 60. You got to sign a government waiver, and wait a week, you'll be at 80. And then this morning I hear on the news, no, we're shortening the time back to 8 weeks. Well, it's not what I was told last week, so I shake my head. I just shake my head.
Okay, all right. I can understand why you're shaking your head, sir.
Yeah, well, anyway,
that's the first I've heard of something like that happening.
Well, I was surprised when she called on Tuesday, and you know, the day before, saying you got to. I mean, personally, I think maybe she had no doses yet and thought, oh, we're just going to play along here and tell the guy you got to come next week. But I didn't know what to say. I was perplexed. I was just like dumbfounded, like what?
Right. So when are you getting your second?
This Friday morning. It's the AstraZeneca. I jumped on that bandwagon of the Kingston area, you know, and
right.
Just deal with it. So
yeah.
Just last thing before I forget, I sure missed the sunshine and lollipops and your trivia game.
Oh, the trivia, yeah. We don't do trivia anymore. Maybe I've been thinking about ways to freshen it up for the summer. Maybe I will.
No, that's fine. But
some news trivia.
Anyway, I've always enjoyed your show.
Well, I thank you, Sam. I thank you for listening. I thank you for calling today, and I'm glad that you're getting your second dose on Friday, sir. Good for you.
Hey, you know what? I'm essential service. I'm vulnerable with the RA, and. My mom passed away in December. We had a virtual funeral. We did end up going on the Quebec side end of April to bury her with 10 people outside with, oh, good God, minus 20 winds. But it's been a rough year.
What a time. Man.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye, Sam. Thank you. Up next is in Canada, Paul in Canada. Good morning, Paul.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes.
I'm a long-time listener.
Appreciate it.
And I just wanted to let you know that 29 days after the first shot, I got Pfizer again, only because I had a heart transplant 7 years ago this November. But I just wanted to say, we're so fortunate in this city to have the Heart Institute. They look after their people. I even felt bad getting my second shot before some nurses got their second shot. But my cardiologist told me that no problem, you're compromised, you have to have it. So I feel very fortunate to live in this city.
Right. So you managed to get 2 doses of vaccine, but they had to give you a new heart to get it done.
That's right.
Okay.
And to take a stroke on the table at the same time.
Right.
You have to go through a lot. But
Creepers.
family,
My goodness gracious. And how are you now, sir?
Fantastic. I walk
that's good.
twice a day and healthy.
Oh, wow. You're back on your feet and walking already.
Oh, God, yeah. It was 7 years ago.
Oh, 7 years ago. Okay.
Yeah, but it was a long haul. I had to go to Gruyere for treatment and stroke and everything else. But I am just so fortunate, and I love the Heart Institute, and we have to support them all the time.
Yeah. Yeah, that Gruyere stroke rehabilitation program is something else, the way they can put people back together there. It's quite incredible. Yeah.
I went in there with a walker, and I came out in 2 weeks because I was young, in my 60s, and you see everything, Rob, in there, and they deserve our dollars just as much.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul.
Okay.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear you're well. Thank you. Bye-bye. Oh, yes. Just very quickly, we won't spend too much time on this because it's kind of off the topic, but remember the notwithstanding clause? Yeah, there's question period underway in the Ontario legislature this morning.
14 years,
a lot of questions about the notwithstanding clause.
Right to ensure that elections are fair in the province of Ontario. We saw what happened in this province when there were no rules in place. In Ontario, more money was being spent by third parties than all other provinces and federal elections combined. That is what the opposition is fighting to retain, Mr. Speaker. We heard the Chief Electoral Officer suggest that that is not what is in the best interest of Ontario. The judge himself, in making his decision, suggested that limits are in fact needed and confirmed that they are both needed and constitutional, Mr. Speaker. So if the opposition won't stand up for fair elections, we certainly will.
The next question, Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Speaker. My next question is also for the Premier, but I can assure this House Leader that we are, in fact, fighting for the charter rights of the people of Ontario and against the government that's taking them away. Look, this debate is just another example of this Premier's bad choices. We could be working on a plan for safer schools to make sure that our kids whose education has been disrupted badly in the last 2 years are getting the support they need to succeed. We could be ensuring that kids are actually getting the vaccinations they need before school starts. Instead, this government is trampling on people's rights and freedoms, attacking parents, teachers, and education workers instead of working with them to support our kids. Why is the Premier so willing to trample on people's charters' rights to help himself politically, but not willing to put forward a real plan to support our kids as they return to school in the fall?
Of course, Mr. Speaker, as I've said on a number of occasions and you continue to see here today, Speaker, the NDP will stop at nothing to try to eliminate rules which should be put in place, which has been confirmed by the Chief Electoral Officer, which has been confirmed by the Justice in
that's Paul Calandra. He's the government House Leader, and he's doing the heavy lifting in the two-step on this one for the government today on the notwithstanding clause with the legislature back in session this week. Brendan in Gloucester, back to our phone calls. Brendan, Gloucester, good morning, sir.
Yeah, I'm pushing 80.
Pushing 80?
I'm going to have my second Moderna on June 23rd, but I have to stay put.
Why do you have to stay put? What do you mean you have to stay put?
Well, we have the Delta coming from India.
Oh, yes, I see. Okay, because you're not fully vaccinated yet, you mean. You have
That's correct.
Yeah, you're still kind of isolated then.
Yes.
So Wednesday of next week, you'll be getting your second shot.
And I'll look forward to it, and I encourage others to get vaccinated.
Yes, absolutely, sir. Yeah. Yeah. Well, you'll be one of the lucky ones when you do. Only 12% of the population is fully vaccinated 6 months into the vaccination program, sir.
Yes, and then you listen to politicians this morning on Article 27. Give me a break.
Okay, Article 27. I'm not sure what you're talking about there, Brendan.
Well, Well, I'll let you, in your free time, check it out.
Okay, Article 27. Okay, Brendan, thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Yeah, hope all goes well next week. Article 27, not sure. Not sure. Dan in Embrun.
Good morning, Rob.
Yes, sir. Dan.
First, keep it on a happy note. It's nice to hear some good news. Our lad two calls ago from the Heart Institute.
Yes.
I've been there. I'll attest it's true.
Yes, okay.
But now back to your favorite phrase.
An abundance of caution.
Yeah, well, I put an expletive in there, but anyway.
Okay, all right. Well, let's not do that.
Abundance of caution and all these, in brackets, parentheses, or whatever you want to call it, experts. When will we ever be out of an abundance of caution? I know they say they're opening up. Yes, we're going to stage 3. And then you hear that the Red Blacks are allowed to practice, but no fans. And when are we going to have fans? No numbers. So that means what? No Blues Fest, no nothing. As to when? All because of the quote-unquote abundance of
caution.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, just think about this, especially with places like the CFL, with Blues Fest, or any of these other things. I mean, Blues Fest is lucky they don't actually have to pay a whole crap load of salaries when a thing isn't working. They still have some costs, but meanwhile, the CFL, they depend on fans. It's not like the NFL. It's not, it's not like hockey where they get a huge amount of.
No. It's very, it's what they call gate driven, right? It relies on people actually buying tickets and going to the games. Yeah.
So what's getting me is when is it happen? When is it going to happen? They know for a fact that a lot of people are going to start getting their second shots now, because a bunch of us got our first shots 4 months ago. I got mine last week, my second.
Oh, you got your second.
My mother's in a nursing home. That's why I got early. But the point is, there's going to be 1% to 2% every 2 days increase in the second shots, just because it started 4 months ago and things are moving. But the biggest thing that drives me nuts is when you hear people talking about the AstraZeneca and everything else is how people know, the government knows, how many doses are coming in weekly. Why do they not say we've received, I'm just going to throw a number, 1 million doses for this week? 627,000 are going to this place, 200,000 to this place, 40,000 to this. Where the hell is that number?
Okay. Well, I'm sure they must have that number somewhere.
Yeah, but you guys, even the news guys can't get it.
No. Okay. Thank you, Dan. Thank you. I got to run. I'm way over time, Dan. I got to run. I'm getting the evil eye from David. 10:49, Rob Snow Show. Raresh, Ron, hang on the line. Be right back. Rob Snow Show, City News.
An old-fashioned traditional grocery store. You're going to find a butcher. Okay, you want a steak cut a certain way, you're going to get it. There's flour piled in the warehouse. There's mixers on the floor. There's flour on the floor. The bakery's rented out to Frank Nicolo. It's him and his son come in at night. They mix the dough, they roll the dough, and they bake the dough. It's not the traditional frozen and thaw and put it in the bin. Okay, it's made from scratch 7 days a week. It's probably the only bakery left in Ottawa that does that. Then customer service. We're big on that. The cashiers, the deli. You're not. If you ask for something, they're not going to point. It's an aisle number 7. They're going to bring you there. Okay. If you have too much groceries out, we'll take it out to your car. You know what I mean? There's nothing we don't do for our customers, and we evolved around our customers. They would come in and say, can you try getting me this? Can you get me this? So that's how we built the lineup we have now, okay? So we have a lot of unique items that someone that came over to, live in Canada hasn't seen this particular product, but we sourced it and we have it for them that, like something they used to have as a kid. We have a lot of those unique items, a lot, from like all over the world. and we source it through, distributors in Montreal and Toronto that bring in the product in bulk, and we piggyback off of them. Probably the largest European deli in Ottawa. We sell lots because people buy lots. It's nothing really complicated about that. We turn over a lot of product. We package it properly. We buy, and we're always consistent. You're always going to find, Cuddy turkey breast, Saint Daniel mortadella. You're always going to get the same brands. We don't flip back and forth to save 20 cents. It's always the same brands the last 29 years. Best sandwiches in town. It's simple. It starts off with fresh bread every day baked in the store. Anything that's left over goes to breadcrumbs. So you're getting a fresh bun every day that was baked probably 4 hours before you get here, okay? Not only baked, made, mix the flour, roll the dough, proof the bread, and bake the bread, okay? Then all the ingredients come right off the shelves. Your lettuce, your tomatoes, all your condiments, and they're cut up fresh in the deli. Not like the big, corporate restaurant chains that your lettuce comes in shredded in a bag, you open it up and you throw it in the bin. Takes, 2 or 3 days to get here from California. How long is it in the bag? The big difference is like making a sandwich at home and you don't have to do the work. It's really what the trick is, and using the freshest ingredients possible.
It's time to talk back.
On the Rob Snow Show.
Have your say and call now.
613-750-1310.
Final few minutes of the Talkback Hour here on the Rob Snow Show at 750-1310. Talking primarily about the reopening and the pace of the reopening. We're in this for another 3 weeks, and then we're on to phase 2, and we're there for another 3 weeks, and then hopefully we're into the final phase. And we're talking about vaccinations as well, and the fact that 12% of the population has been fully vaccinated 6 months into the vaccination program. It was 6 months ago today that it began. Raresh in Canada, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Rob.
Hi.
I will have starting a little bit, won't be long. Just I have a honest question and answer question from you. Are you consider yourself as a Canadian citizen, free man in this country, or yes or no?
I would say I'm a free man. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Myself, not anymore.
Not anymore.
I was coming, not anymore. I was coming with a fully, let's say, energy, looking for a fully freedom in this country. When I came 15 years ago, I left an East European country, not just because I was poor, just because I was looking for freedom.
Yep.
And I came and I had that feeling for the beginning. Right now, not anymore. Whatever the government is doing at the level of federals, or I'm very disappointed about Doug Ford, but maybe it's not Doug Ford for the fault, because has a lot of manipulation there around, I believe. But at this point, whatever is doing the government, it's totally wrong. We have a clown who leading this country, a clown. Make us to be ashamed whatever is doing in the world, and to do the phases here in Ontario by the 13 and 12 cases. It's even a flu, regular flu has more cases before. Nobody was, I understand COVID when it was 100 cases per day or 200, but with the 12.
Yeah, plus we didn't have vaccines when that was happening.
I'm sorry?
We didn't even have vaccines back then.
How can I trust the vaccine when I have neighbor? I don't do yet the vaccine, okay? But I have neighbors who did twice the vaccine, okay? And I'm asking, why you still wear a mask if you did a vaccine? Well, how can I trust you from now in that vaccine if you yourself, you do vaccinated, you still wear a mask?
Yeah. Well,
So
I mean,
what
there are
is the
vaccine.
point?
Yeah, but there are mask mandates in the city. So
Exactly.
I guess you feel oppressed. You feel a little. Do you seriously feel like you're
100%.
behind the Iron Curtain communist country oppressed? I mean, is that what you're telling me?
Exactly.
Really?
You know what? I know the trick. They cannot fooling me around anymore, because I've been there many years, and I came and look at this. What's happened?
What country?
Romania.
Romania. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I have that feeling. What it's like in the last especially in the last 2 years. Okay, but let's say in general in the last 5 years with that this guy was leading this country, but it's not the discussion. The discussion is we still want to keep us mask just because we want to keep the mouth shut, or what is the idea?
Okay.
It's,
all right.
The point is, yes, we'll get vaccinated, but I need a little bit trust from everybody. You know what I mean? So reopen, because there are people who are waiting. The economy is falling in this country. You are still not reopen and everything. That was my worry at this point, because we're gonna be in other trouble. And before I leave, Rob, tell me, what is the idea of keeping the Ontario locked when in Brazil, when it's the highest cases in the world at this point?
Yeah.
They have a Copa America soccer. They move it in Brazil.
Yeah. And they have the highest cases in the world. We wouldn't want to, look, in the UK. This evening in the UK, Boris Johnson today is going to press the pause button. He's going to say they were supposed to reopen totally next week, and it's on hold now for 4 weeks.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. I got to go. Thank you. Okay. We're like living in Cold War Romania, he says. How do you know? Because I live there. That's scary. Okay, we have to be very quick. Ron, good morning, Ron.
Good morning, Ron.
Yeah, hi, Ron.
I'm going to change my moniker from Ron in Tampa to Ron in Canada.
Okay, you're back. Good for you. Okay. Yep.
Back 4 weeks.
Back fully vaccinated, right? Fully vaccinated. Yep.
Something you said earlier, Rob, that prompted me to call you today. The 12% fully vaccinated.
Yes.
I tried a week or two ago. I phoned Ottawa Public Health. Wasn't easy. Got through to somebody. There is no way for us to register as fully vaccinated Canadians, Ottawans, Ontarians.
Oh, really?
No capability of. Now, I don't know how many, of us miserable people that left, because a lot of Canadians think we're miserable people. But I don't know what percentage. A buddy of mine in Stittsville.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. This 12% only captures people, I guess, who were fully vaccinated here.
Correct.
Right? Doesn't capture somebody like you who was in Florida.
So I don't know if there's 100 of us or 1,000 of us. I have no idea.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know how many. Yeah.
So,
and neither does the government. Very good point, Ron. I got to run, Ron. Thank you. I got to run. We're right at a time. It's tight today. Andrew's standing by with the news, and then the G7 all wrapped up. We'll go over it with Geoffrey Johnston, international affairs columnist, Kingston Whig-Standard, on The Rob Snow Show on City News.
is City News.
CIWW 1310 AM in Ottawa.
And CJET 1011 FM in Smiths Falls and the Valley. Number 1 for local news in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 1011 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, June 14th. Good morning. I'm Andrew Boyle. Right now in Ottawa and Smiths Falls, 20 degrees, and here's what's making news in Ottawa and the Valley. Prosecutors have now laid terrorism charges against a man accused of driving down and killing 4 members of a Muslim family in London, Ontario. The Crown says Nathaniel Veltman's 4 counts of first-degree murder constitute an act of terrorism. Prosecutors have upgraded those charges under Section 83 of the Criminal Code. A black bear on the loose in Barrhaven, now in the backyard of an Earl Mulligan address. Police say it appears the bear may be injured. They're now waiting for natural resources experts to arrive on the scene. A temporarily closed section of Earl Mulligan has rerouted a 171 OC Transpo bus. That detour between Woodruff and Woodgate. It's not known how long that detour is going to be in place. City News time, 11:02, and now your forecast with meteorologist Jill Taylor.
On the unsettled side today for Ottawa, the Valley, and Smiths Falls, there is a chance of showers, thunderstorms, a high about 24 degrees. Tonight, more showers and thunderstorms at times through the evening, then mainly cloudy overnight, the low near 15. Tomorrow, some showers in the morning, then clearing in 25. For today, the high, 24.
And right now in Ottawa and in Smiths Falls, it's 20 degrees. Latest numbers from the province show 447 new cases of COVID-19 today. 28 of these cases are in Ottawa. There's 1 each in Eastern Ontario's health unit and Renfrew County. No new cases being reported today in Leeds, Grenville, Lanark. The positive cases come from just over 13,500 tests done and a positivity rate of 2.8%. The province is also reporting 4 more deaths. City News time, 11:03. No closer to watching a sporting event in person in Ontario this summer, but the teams themselves on track for a return to training camp. This includes CFL teams like the Red Blacks. There could be increased contact tracing and health and safety protocols, and the minister in charge, Lisa MacLeod, says there will be some input from local health officials as well.
The local public health unit would have to sign off in Hamilton, in Ottawa, and in Toronto. We'd have to make sure that they put in place strict travel and quarantine rules of 7 days isolation. They'd have to cohort, essentially adopt many of the practices that the NHL and AHL had to in order for their accelerated return to play.
Now, the minister says fans will likely return in a gradual fashion, but no timeline yet on when the first few fans would be allowed into those buildings. Federal government delivering on a call to action number 17 from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. Everyone of First Nation, Inuit, or Métis background can now apply to reclaim their name on passports and other government ID. The commission had demanded governments allow survivors and their families to restore names changed by the residential school system. We are expecting a hot, dry summer in Eastern Ontario. Environment Canada's senior climatologist Dave Phillips joined the Rob Snow Show to say more rain is needed, though, right now to help the crops.
Every month since January has been below normal precipitation, so I think it's beginning to show wear and tear, where by this time you really haven't had those really hot days to show the kind of drought-like condition.
Phillips says Ottawa's only had about half the rain we would normally get by this time of year. He says more despite rain is coming this week, but it likely won't be enough. I'm Andrew Boyle for News Anytime. Follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
He's the opinionated Ottawa icon.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News.
1011 FM and 1310 AM.
Canada and the other G7 countries have now finished 3 days of summit meetings in England, focused on ending COVID-19. And let's review the G7 meeting with Geoffrey Johnston, international affairs columnist, Kingston Whig-Standard, with us every Monday morning. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob. How are you?
Perfect timing. You could not have timed it perfect. I mean, we're out of a G7 meeting into a NATO summit. It's right in your wheelhouse, Geoffrey. So, what do you think? What are some of the takeaways from the G7?
Well, I think there were two really significant areas that were discussed. So the first one was China. And the G7, I think with a lot of prodding from Canada, really pushed the issue of dealing with China with a unified voice, because we know that China has been trying to bully Canada, holding two of our citizens hostage, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. So the G7 agreed that there would be a more united front on China, that Canada and the other G7 countries would speak with a united voice on human rights and climate change and other issues. And one of the issues that I think will be pushed will be this hostage diplomacy response, because earlier this year you and I talked about this declaration put forward by Canada to decry hostage diplomacy. So I think that is a good development coming out of the G7. Also, the G7 is going to try to counter China's rising influence. They didn't put it in those terms, but that's what it's about. China's got this Belt and Road Infrastructure Initiative that's going around the world. They're building infrastructure in the developing world, and this puts developing countries heavily into debt to China. And so the G7 said that they would concentrate more on providing infrastructure financing and funding for the developing world that wouldn't cripple their economies. So, and this is a way to take influence away from China and help the developing world. So that's a positive development. On the negative side, the G7, I think, failed to come up with an urgent action plan on COVID-19 vaccines. So going into this summit, former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown, who's been very vocal on this issue, and he's also a special envoy for the United Nations, said that the G7 really needed to take action and help fund and disseminate vaccines in the developing world. And the World Health Organization said that the developing world needs probably about 11 billion vaccines. The G7 pledged 1 billion vaccines over the next year. Now, according to the Prime Minister's office, Canada is contributing $1.3 billion to the overall to the Access to COVID-19 Accelerator, that's known as the ACT Accelerator. And that money is being used to buy 87 million vaccine doses for developing countries. And Canada is going to donate 13 billion doses. But there's a lot of dissatisfaction among non-governmental organizations. The vaccine pledges from Canada and the G7 have been disappointing. So, for example, Métis Sans Frontières, I've interviewed them a number of times, and I interviewed them actually again just recently. One of their people said what started out as a commitment by the G7 to donate 1 billion doses has ended up in a commitment to donate 870 million doses. And they also said that despite Canada announcing on Friday 100 million dose donation, Canada will only actually donate 13 million actual doses, and the rest will be made up by financial contributions to the ACT Accelerator. Also, it's pointed out by Métis Sans Frontières that the 13 million doses that will be given by Canada will be for a vaccine that is yet to receive regulatory approval in this country, Novavax. So that is disappointing. So overall, the clinical,
if I could just, the clinical trials for that vaccine have not been going well. So that's supposed to be the one that's domestically manufactured here. So who knows when that will happen? But so you would say, I wanted to ask you about this because when you were here last week, we talked about U.S. President Joe Biden committed 500 million doses. He said the United States government is going to buy 500 million doses of the Pfizer vaccine. And I remember hearing that, and he was quite adamant that it be the Pfizer vaccine, that it, obviously, in his opinion, that's the superior vaccine. and that if it's good enough for Americans, it should be, the developing world should not have to do with a substandard vaccine, for example. But that's so. I'd be curious to know what how Canada's pledge would commit. And I was thinking, well, if we're a tenth of the size, we should be donating 50 million doses. But that's not what we're doing, is it?
No, it's not.
No,
it's not.
No.
And to be honest, too, the 500 million isn't going to be nearly enough. It sounds like a lot, but when you consider
one country, though, one country.
I know, but they're the arsenal, though, as they say, of the vaccine war, and what they need right now is 11 billion doses, and maybe they're going to get something a little less than a billion doses. Urgent action is required right now. So I recently interviewed UNICEF, and their recommendation for Canada was to start giving donations this month. So Canada's getting millions and millions and millions of doses in June and July and August. So what they're saying is for this month, they want Canada to set aside 1 in 10 of those doses. So we're getting Pfizer and Moderna. They want to set aside 1 in 10 of those doses right now and give them to COVAX so they can send them to low and middle income countries. And then as the summer wears on, as more and more Canadians are vaccinated, UNICEF is asking Canada to increase the percentage that we're sending right now and over the summer to COVAX. Now, why am I quoting UNICEF? UNICEF is the lead international organization that is procuring and distributing the COVID-19 vaccines to the developing world, because UNICEF has all this experience. They're the ones that do all these childhood vaccinations and procure syringes and other supplies. So what they say really does matter. And also on the weekend, David Morley, the president and CEO of UNICEF, he released a very gentle statement and said that he welcomes the announcement by the G7 on vaccines, but he also said that Canada's got put forward a very clear timetable on vaccines, and the fact is Canada hasn't put forward a very clear timetable. Now, I also, over the weekend, interviewed the emergency coordinator for Métis Sans Frontières in Peru. Now, as you know, the situation in Peru with COVID-19 is not good. You've got the ICUs are full, and they have per capita the highest death rate in the world from COVID-19. And the emergency coordinator brought up the issue of the G7. I didn't bring it up. He brought it up, and he said that the G7's putting out a lot of talk, but the fact is that Peru needs help right now. They need the vaccines right now. They've only vaccinated about 10% of their population, and they're worried about another wave of COVID-19 infections. So the G7 has fallen short, and I'm sorry to say Canada has also fallen short. And the G7 and Canada cannot rest on its laurels because they haven't done nearly enough.
All right, I have to play you this clip because people find this odd. I found it odd. Trudeau kind of nasty when he's being asked questions by reporters during one of his news conferences, and this is what he. We can't play the whole thing, but we'll play the key part of it. This is the Prime Minister.
And climate change. The impacts of this G7 will be felt long after the newspapers you write for will have been used to wrap fish.
Okay. He said, in case you didn't hear it, I know the audio is not great. The impacts of this G7 will be felt long after the newspapers you work for are used to wrap fish. That's mean to say that.
Yeah, it was pretty.
That's Trumpian. Okay, that's like you are fake news. You're part of the failing fake news media. It's no different. Okay, it's no different. It's like contempt. You have contempt for the media.
Yeah, I'll try not to take that one personally.
Man, it's hard not to, though.
Because my piece was in Friday, the same day as the Globe and Mail's piece, and both of them were raising the issue of vaccines and what Canada was and was not doing. I will also note that on Friday, there was a lot of pushback from Mr. Trudeau's supporters on social media against the Globe and Mail, and some people were arguing against me as well. I think the Liberals are stung by the criticism, and they're probably not going to be happy with my next.
Well, I don't think they're used to. Well, particularly with the Globe and Mail has long been seen as a liberal newspaper, and it's been very pointed in much of its criticism, and it's been very revealing in much of its reporting about the Trudeau government. The Globe and Mail is the newspaper that broke the SNC-Lavalin story, right? So there's...
The Globe and Mail is a reputable newspaper. It does a great job.
Sure.
I subscribe to the Globe and Mail, even though I write for another newspaper, and I read it. Your point about the Trumpian comment is, I agree that was Trumpian, and I hate to say it, that some of the comments on social media were straying into that area where they were attacking the Globe and Mail, and they were trying to parse words, and basically they didn't use the term fake news, but that's basically what they were saying. But the bottom line is this: Canada and the G7 have fallen short, but it is not too late to tweak this plan and to listen to UNICEF and Médecins Sans Frontières and other organizations and start funneling more vaccines right now to the developing world. Now, I'm going to say Canadians have to understand this, because if Canada starts diverting some of the vaccines coming in right now to the developing world, some people in politics are going to then turn around and say that the Trudeau government is not looking after Canadians first. And I say to that, look, we have to look after the world in order to stop these variants from arising. And if we leave large parts of the world unvaccinated until 2023, we're going to all be in trouble. So I think we all need to understand that if it takes just a little bit longer to vaccinate every person in this country in order to help vaccinate healthcare workers in other parts of the world and tamp down these variants, then we have to do it. So we can't have it both ways. We can't then, on the one hand, criticize Trudeau for not doing enough and then turn around and criticize him if he actually does what we're asking him to do. So we have to be fair about that.
Okay. You shouldn't use newspaper to wrap fish anyway. It's not healthy. Okay. Right.
You should read it and recycle it.
That's right. Okay. Thank you, Geoffrey. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye. From the Kingston Whig-Standard, Geoffrey Johnston. Okay, David Sali from the Ottawa Business Journal on some of the big local business stories this week. That's coming right up here on City News.
I started, as I said, at Lester's Barber Shop, and it was kind of, it was one of those things that it was just an opportune time for me to get into it, just because he had decided that he was going to retire after the fire, and then the opportunity presented itself that I could open my own shop. And so I went from 150 square foot space on St. Patrick's Street to a 600 square foot space just on Beechwood to now here, and I'm in a 1,400 square foot space now. And I don't know, it's been an interesting journey because, you think that you're just going to be just you or a really small space, and then all of a sudden, you've got 10 other people working for you. You're in a much bigger space, and even incorporating the boutique. Last March, when all of this started, we closed down a little bit earlier than everybody else, and I'm going to say, being honest, part of it was social pressure. We shut down before everybody else did, and I'm watching all these other salons, just be really responsible and say we don't want to be a part of the process. So we got ahead of it and closed, and then, the week later, the government's like, everybody's shutting down. And so it was a little nerve-wracking. I guess the first step of us, trying to innovate and just keep moving forward was when the salon is closed, right? It's like, what do you do? Our whole industry is based on being with people, cutting their hair, providing a service. You have to be people together to do that. You can't do that remotely at all. So one of the first things that I saw in our industry, what people were trying to do is they were selling their hair products that they had. And luckily, I've had a website that always had a web store in the back. I just never used it. So as soon as I saw that people were doing that, I was like, okay, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to load up all my stuff. And so that worked out really, really well. And then from there, I managed to find a place that was like a wholesale website that allowed you to have net 60 days. So you don't have to, you can order all the stuff. stuff. You don't have to prepay any of it. There's free returns, all that. So that made it really easy for me to bring in other products and start trying to sell it. And so I went from selling hair products to shave products to bath and body products to a little bit of clothing and jewelry, and now it's just morphed into this whole, like, I want to make it a whole legit boutique. And by December of last year, I decided that this is a full-fledged thing and we're going to separate it. It's its own company. So it's really finding an opportunity that's there and running with it. So it's been really fun. Our clients are loving it. Our clients that have been here for a long time, they love it.
Strong voice.
Strong opinions.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News.
101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
David Sali is back from the Ottawa Business Journal. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
One of the things I love about the reporting that you and your team at the Ottawa Business Journal do is you find these companies that are doing all sorts of cool things in Ottawa, and they're they're under the radar. They're not the Shopifys, okay? They're not the Kinaxis that make the headlines all the time. I think about last week. We talked about the company that is off of Preston Street, and it's making software for lunar rovers, right? What was the name of that company? It had a really cool name.
Mission Control.
Mission Control, that's right. Mission Control Systems or something like that. And you have a very similar story this week, MDS Aero Support. And you read it and you realize, wow, here's an Ottawa company and it works with the who's who of aerospace. Tell us about this company, Dave.
Well, Rob, you're absolutely right. This is a company that's been around since 1985. And yet most people have probably never heard of them. And they fly under the radar, and that's an apt metaphor in this case because what they do is they build and they design and build these facilities that test aircraft engines. And Rob, these aren't little sheds here. We're talking the latest one they've just completed for Rolls-Royce is the surface area is the size of a football field, roughly 5 stories high, concrete walls, almost 10 feet thick. So you get the idea. I mean, you're testing. So Rolls-Royce is using this new one that they just finished in England to test to test jet engines. So they're literally dangling these huge jet engines from the roof, and they're doing everything. They're literally throwing everything but the kitchen sink at these engines to see how much abuse they can take, essentially. So you've got that, you've got them running, and then they do all kinds of stuff. They actually X-ray them while they're running to see what's happening to the insides of the engine. So in order to X-ray something that large, that's a big X-ray machine. It isn't you're not just throwing the old lead vest on here. They worked with Calian, another Ottawa company, to make sure they got all the technology right, that it would protect everybody. They use a huge steel and concrete shield that slides over, basically blocks the entrance to protect all the surrounding buildings when they have to X-ray these things. So this is a massive project, and this is what they do all over the world. This particular one took about 3 years to build. It took a little longer than expected because of the pandemic. That kind of caused a few supply chain snafus and whatnot, and they had to, could only have a limited number of workers on the site at a time. So that took a little longer, and the price tag on these things is not small. Rolls-Royce paid about 90 million pounds or $155 million for this test facility. And this is what MDS Aero has been doing for years. As you say, a who's who of companies, Airbus, Air France, General Electric, Pratt & Whitney.
So let me ask you then, David. So let me ask you, given that the last year and a half has not been kind to aviation, so what has business been like at MDS? And so you're right, Rob. It has not been. I mean, there aren't many industries that have been hit
harder over the last 15 months or so than, as you know, than the aviation industry. Airlines and anything to do with supporting airlines and airports has taken a huge hit, and it's the same with MDS Aero. They employ about 450 people, and luckily they didn't have to lay any of them off. They use government support programs to keep everybody on staff, but revenues did fall quite a bit. They're going to be in the 100 million range for over the past fiscal year, as opposed to 150 million the year before. So it's obviously a lot of customers putting projects on hold, waiting to see how things play out. So they're hopeful. I talked to their CEO last week, John Geoffrey, who is a really, he's just a great down-to-earth, friendly guy, loves Ottawa's tech scene, and he says, that they're really optimistic. Things are going to bounce back pretty quickly. Let's face it, people are going to get flying again. Aviation's not going anywhere. You've got emerging markets, Brazil, China, other countries that are really going to step up. So he feels like there's still a lot of opportunities. This is a company that works in more than, about 24 countries around the world, and that total's growing all the time. Yeah. So he just really feels that things will pick up again, and MDS Aero is just going to keep churning out these massive
it's amazing.
Massive test facilities. Yeah. I know.
I mean, when one of your clients is Rolls-Royce, you're probably doing pretty well.
I would think so. Well, I mean, I don't know myself, but yeah, I would assume that if you're working with Rolls-Royce, that
270 staff, off headquarters here in Ottawa, Germany, Russia, the UK, and customers in 23 countries. Pretty cool local story, isn't it? Isn't that amazing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is totally amazing. Our time a little tighter this week, unfortunately, David. That's all the time we have. But thank you so much for telling that story. That's fantastic for the Ottawa Business Journal. Thank you again.
Well, thanks a lot,
we'll
Rob.
talk next week. Yeah. David Sali from the Ottawa Business Journal on MDS Aero Support. Read that story at obj.ca. We'll be right back talking COVID-19 in Ottawa, COVID-19 in Ontario, and the pace of the reopening. All of that and more just ahead. This is City News.
in Ottawa and the Valley. This is City News, now on 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
It's Monday, the 14th of June. Good morning. I'm Sarah Buchan. Right now in Ottawa, we've got mostly cloudy skies and 21 degrees. And in Smiths Falls, it's mostly cloudy and 21. Here's what's making news this hour. Happening now in Barrhaven, Ministry of Natural Resources officers are on the way responding to that black bear sighting in Barrhaven. Ottawa police say the bear appears to be injured and has settled into a backyard on Earl Mulligan Drive. Now, that road is closed between Woodruff and Woodgate. That's to limit disturbance to the bear. And stay with City News for more on this developing story. Provincial health officials report 28 new cases of COVID-19 in Ottawa. Out of 447 new cases across Ontario, there are 4 new deaths in the province due to the virus. Elsewhere locally, the Leeds Grenville Lanark Health Unit confirms 1 new case in the past 24 hours and has added 3 cases from previous dates. The province is reporting 1 new case in Eastern Ontario and 1 in Renfrew County. Health units update their numbers in the afternoon. Ontario says it's accelerated its return to play plan for professional and elite amateur leagues as the province loosens its COVID restrictions. Sports Minister Lisa MacLeod says high-level teams can now hold non-contact practice and dry land training in Ontario. Teams and leagues will be allowed to resume games as soon as August, although there's currently no plan to allow spectators. MacLeod says this includes the Toronto Blue Jays, the Toronto Raptors, and Toronto FC, although their ability to play teams in the United States is a federal responsibility. I'm Sarah Buchan. For News Anytime, follow up online at ottawa.citynews.ca.
The world is changing.
So keep up with Rob.
The Rob Snow Show returns on Rogers TV and City News, 101.1 FM and 1310 AM.
Again, the number of cases province-wide today, 447. I said we're bouncing around 500 lately, which is greatly improved from, where we were in April when we were bouncing between 3,000 and 4,000. So down considerably, 447. Ottawa, number 28 today. It was 34 yesterday. And according to Ottawa Public Health, 14 people in hospital, Ottawa area hospitals, and 3 in the ICU. And it's Monday after the first weekend of a little bit of freedom. So there is much to discuss this morning with Dr. Isaac Bogoch, infectious disease physician and a member of Ontario's COVID-19 vaccine task force. Morning, doctor.
Hey, morning.
How would you describe right now the current state of COVID-19?
We are well along the path to improvement. Maybe I said that wrong. Okay. We're well along the path to normalcy. There still are going to be bumps along the road, some that we can expect, some that we might not expect. And we just need to keep motoring with vaccinations for the time being.
Okay. What is the biggest risk right now?
Delta variant. I think that's the biggest risk.
Delta variant.
It's here. Yep. It's here. It's spreading. It's spreading predominantly among unvaccinated people and in under-vaccinated communities. We do have a crystal ball. This is one of those sad but great opportunities where we can predict the future. You just look at the United Kingdom. That is going to happen to us. And what they're seeing there is exactly what we're, starting to see here. More Delta variant. It's taken over. It does certainly spread quickly. It will find under-vaccinated communities and unvaccinated people. The vaccines do work. They really do. You need 2 doses for much better protection compared to 1. 1 dose still helps a bit, but 2 doses is better. We've got a very rapid second dose strategy. But at some point, we'll cross that path where our reopening strategy will enable more and more people to gather indoors. We're not really there in Ontario. 15% non-essential retail capacity at patios is not going to drive the pandemic. That's clear. Okay. But when we reach that time where we're putting a significant number of people back in indoor venues, we should really have a lot of people with second doses of vaccines, and that will really help us out.
You just mentioned the UK, and later today, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, is going to announce, if the media reports are accurate at all, a pause. That on the 21st of June, the UK was supposed to basically enter the final phase of its reopening plan. But yesterday, there were 7,500 new cases across the UK, 8 deaths, and that means new infections were up 50% in a week, Doctor. 50% in a week. Delta variant driven, and hospitalizations spiked as well. They were up 15%, 15, not 50. So that's the risk, right?
That's exactly it.
That situation happens here.
Yeah, I mean, listen, the laws of biology work on both sides of the Atlantic. We know what's going to happen. We know how this spreads. We know who gets it, and we know the degree of protection that we're afforded by vaccination. I mean, does that mean we're going to need to lock down again? I don't know. I don't think so. I really don't. I mean, if you have a considerable number of people who are fully vaccinated, you're not really talking about, stretching your healthcare system beyond capacity like we were in the midst of the second wave and then again in the third wave. But, don't be surprised if we start to have cases plateau and ultimately rise again. And don't be surprised if that's followed by a rise in hospitalizations. And don't be surprised if that's among unvaccinated people predominantly. And you know what? Of course, there's going to be some people who are vaccinated. We know these vaccines aren't perfect. They're really, really good, but they're not perfect. But this will overwhelmingly be in unvaccinated individuals.
Okay. But is a fourth wave out of the question because of our levels of vaccination right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think we have to be careful here. Like, a wave just means a rise in cases, right? That's all it means. Yeah. So we probably will have a rise in cases, but then we have to really, dig a bit deeper and say, okay, what does that actually mean? It might not mean that much, because if the vast majority of people are vaccinated, those cases don't really translate into significant illness for the vast majority of people. Some people will have no symptoms, some people will have mild symptoms, and sadly, a few of those people will have significant symptoms and land themselves in hospital. But the goal is for the vaccines to reduce this, potentially fatal infection in some individuals into the sniffles. That's, turning it in from a public health emergency into an inconvenience. That's the goal. That's the goal. It's not going to stop this infection. It's just going to reduce it. So even if there is a rise in cases, if enough people are vaccinated, most people will do just fine. It won't overwhelm our healthcare systems. We won't have to shut down again. But that really relies on people coming out and getting vaccinated, which they're doing in tremendous numbers.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. It's very encouraging, isn't it?
Oh, it's amazing. Yeah. I mean, we got close to 200,000 vaccines administered in a single day once. We're averaging now about 170-ish thousand vaccines per day. Just to be clear, I mean, I get that there's bumps and the vaccine rollout has certainly had some roadblocks along the way. But if you want to compare Ontario to like just about anywhere else in the world, that's about as fast as it gets. That's probably the fastest pace globally, or at least up there with, the fastest.
I mean, the frustration that I get from the listeners to this radio show, Doctor, aren't that I don't want the vaccine. It's that I want it, but I can't get it. Right. So I think that says kind of something about the, where we are with the mindset here in Ontario. So I want to ask you, hey, did you do anything exciting this weekend? I mean, you've been on the front lines for all of this. So did you go out, celebrate, have a glass of wine and a steak or anything like that? Or
totally. I went with my wife to a patio in our neighborhood. It was great. Had someone, kids were sort of minding their own business, so we could just have a nice little lunch. That was nice.
For you.
I had the usual meetings and all this other crap that doesn't really end on weekend or no weekend. But I was able to enjoy the weather. It was really nice here in Toronto.
That's good. What do you think about? Okay, so we're kind of in this stage for 3 weeks. And then we see where we are, and then we'll go to a next stage, and then we'll stay there for 3 weeks, and then hopefully, fingers crossed, okay, then it's on to the final phase. What do you think about spacing it out like that?
I mean, I love that they said that the dates aren't set in stone. I think that's a key thing to say, right? If things are going well, if the metrics are all getting better, then the three key ones are pace of vaccination, hospital capacity, and burden of COVID in the community. If all those are heading in the right direction, there's no reason to wait 3 weeks. And they moved the first phase up a few days. And I wouldn't say that's meaningless. It might be meaningless to some people, but I think if you're a business owner and you want to have a busy patio over the weekend, that's probably a pretty meaningful change.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing is true for the second and the third waves. They're not married to those dates. And I just think we have to be flexible and have the ability to pivot. If that means moving things up, great. No one wants to talk about it, myself included. But if things, spiral out of control for no apparent reason, which I don't see what's going to happen, maybe you have to push pause like Boris Johnson's doing. Okay, you've got to be able to pivot in a meaningful manner. I think it's also fair to say that the United Kingdom is in a much, much, much greater state of reopening than we are here in Canada. Like way far. It's not like they're pausing their stage one. Like things are open. They're just not 100% fully
Right.
open.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Doctor.
Have a great day.
Nice to hear from you. Dr. Isaac Bogoch, infectious disease physician from the COVID-19 Vaccine Task Force. So from there, to the view of business. And Jennifer Kwiecinski joins me now. CFIB. Sorry? Julie. Julie. Yeah, it would be the first name I'd screw up. Julie Kwiecinski, CFIB Director of Provincial Affairs for Ontario. Good morning.
Good morning, Rob.
Yeah, nice to hear from you.
Well, always a pleasure to be on your show to share our members' views from across Ontario, including in your very own Ottawa region.
And how are your members feeling?
Well, they're very frustrated. They've had little or no opportunity to make sales. The rest of the country is reopening much faster. And you look at, say, a province like Alberta, they'll likely be fully open just about the time you'll be able to get a haircut in Ontario. And I have to say, I'm actually very, very encouraged by your last guest, Dr. Isaac Bogoch, who actually said with the metrics getting better, you shouldn't have to wait the 3 weeks in between steps.
Well, he said they don't have to be carved in stone, is what he said. Yeah,
absolutely. And that's really encouraging because I have to tell you, we hear from businesses, so many businesses, we have a helpline so businesses can call in whether they're members or not. The things we've been hearing are they're worried about the survival of their business due to debt levels and the pace of recovery. They need help from governments to continue, even when the switch goes on and the economy starts to reopen more. Programs like the Ontario Small Business Support Grant should be resurrected. The PPE grant should be resurrected, and the federal programs that businesses need to keep going to survive, like the wage and rent subsidy, they should be extended beyond September, and they should also not be scaled back, which is set to happen as of July 3rd.
Okay. Are there some segments of your membership, particular sectors of business, that are hurting more than others right now?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I don't want to single anyone out here, but I think it goes without saying. I'll give you a short list of businesses that we're really getting a lot of calls from, say, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, and even beyond that.
Yes.
Hair salons, barbers, nail salons, beauty salons, gyms, fitness studios, dance studios. How about the events and entertainment sector? How about indoor dining? Let's not forget that not all restaurants, Rob, have the capacity to open for patio service. They're actually the lost restaurant children, as I like to call them.
Okay.
And how about retailers with no street-facing entrance? They can't open right now to the 15% capacity that others are allowed.
Which is basically everything in a mall, right?
Yeah, pretty much. Unless you have a store, and it's going to be more the flagship stores that have those street-facing entrances where you can walk in right off the street immediately into the store. And the smaller businesses, yes, they're going to be like crammed like further back in the mall.
Yeah, but your flower shop, your jewelry shop, these kinds of things don't have that luxury, right?
Absolutely. So we're saying basically the same thing as Dr. Isaac Bogoch is like, be flexible here. We're seeing the numbers working in a positive way, and you have to look at a small business, walk a COVID mile in a small business owner's shoes. They're desperate. I mean, the latest debt levels for a business in Ontario with COVID debt is as high as $208,000, and they've basically used all of their personal savings. I've even heard from businesses that have sold their personal homes to keep their businesses going, so then they can keep the business going and also hire back their employees. So it's desperation time here for small business. Even if it's a week or two, it may not seem like a lot, but that's a week of potential sales that business might not otherwise have.
Okay. I thank you for your time this morning, giving us some insight into where we are. Did you get to go out this weekend?
You know
Enjoy
what?
a little bit of freedom.
I don't like crowds. I'm going to wait. When I saw the lineup at the Winners that they showed on CP24, I live in Toronto,
Right.
I thought, no, I'm going to wait till things calm down.
Okay. Thank you for your time again. Bye-bye. Yeah.
Bye.
Julie Kwiecinski from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, Ontario director there. We'll be right back. Rob Snow Show on City News.
Well, we all loved our rock T-shirts growing up, right? It was our badge. Hey, we went to this concert. We knew that band inside out. So we kept doing that and kept promoting that. What's sort of happening now is that audience is dying. I always say the earth is flat. So the 60s rockers are falling off the end of the earth. So you don't see as big a sales anymore because my audience is disappearing. What's sort of helping to promote that history is the kids are buying vinyl. And luckily we have a vinyl shop in the neighborhood here, a record center. So what's happening is I've seen kids come in with their dad. And the dad say, hey, do you have any Beatles shirts? Do you have any CBGB? Do you have any of this? I said, well, why? He said, well, because my daughter's into it. She's wearing my T-shirt. So slowly it's coming back, right? The kids are, I think, getting fed up with the generic music that's out there. And they want to click into something that, first of all, links them to their parents, something that they thoroughly enjoy now, and maybe they're passing it on to their grandkids. Pandemic has been a couple of things, definitely hard on everybody. So much messaging that's out there that people don't understand, stats every day. Jesus, Murphy, like I'm getting a headache just reading this stuff, right? So really it was just trying to understand where we were going to go from there. The city of Ottawa all of a sudden said, everybody's got to wear a mask. You got to wear it on the bus. People were scrambling, okay? And I had, the store next door had really big windows, so I just flooded the window with masks. Well, that was the activity that saved the business. People were coming in buying 2, 3, 4 masks at a time at $20 a pop here. But my masks were so different. They were the Rolling Stones, the Beatles, Queen, all the pop culture. Everything else out there was medical masks. And right, so people said, oh, I don't want to do that. I want to show my rock and roll. So it became the new T-shirt as far as I'm concerned. Well, what I've done, I'm Hindenburg. I'm now at 1114A Wellington Street, which is next door to the Fab Gear store. And the reason I've changed names, I've rebranded the store, is because I was planning on retiring. And in December, I went, oh, I'm not going to retire. But I've committed to changing what the store is about. So I came up with a new name, Fab Gear's Rock Shop, where legends are dressed. And essentially get that message out. I prefer, if the shirt don't fit, you come in, you try another one on. People like to feel the fabrics with clothing. It's amazing. You'll come in and go, oh, I love that. Oh, can I try this? So that's the big difference. I'm not out to make a gazillion dollars. I stick the way I am, old school. I take cash, we take cards. Come on in and talk to the owner.
The Rob Snow Show returns
on Rogers TV and City News 101.1 FM
and 1310 AM.
How would you answer these questions? What did you learn about Indigenous issues in school? What did you really learn about Indigenous history in school? I'll be honest with you, I am a child of the 80s. And I learned almost nothing. I mean, precious little, especially when it comes to residential schools and the history of residential schools. So what's changed? Okay, since then? And what should change from here on in? Jodie Williams joins me, co-chair, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit Education Association of Ontario. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm okay. How are you?
Great.
I didn't go to. Sorry, Jodie Williams. I didn't go to school in Ontario. I should say that I went to elementary and high school in Nova Scotia. But I don't think I'm terribly unique. I'm terribly unique. Is that commonplace across?
It's very common.
Canada.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. Why do you think that is?
Well, we were never meant to have this conversation, first of all. If we think back to, back into the 1800s when this was really being, the architect of not just residential schools. We have to understand that there's a bigger thing happening connected with the Indian Act, which is, horrible legislation. Really, this has been a plan all along to forcibly remove people off of land in order to assume jurisdiction and title to what later then becomes called Canada. And so this, at the time they called it the plan to quote unquote get rid of the Indian problem, which is free roaming Indigenous people on their lands, doing what they've always done forever. And so, this is why we're having the conversation today, and why so many people are a bit shocked to be hearing about some of these things is because this has been an intentional erasure since the beginning.
It reminds me of a line, history is written by the winners.
Yeah, but in this case, there was no war, right? Like there was no war between Britain and the Indigenous nations here. In fact, there are treaties, and those treaties are evidence that there are Indigenous peoples here come from distinct nations that still exist. And so, when we think about geography in school, what map do we always see? We see the map of Canada, we see the provinces, cities, towns. Well, why is it that we don't see the Anishinaabe Nation, for example, or the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Mushkegowuk, or any other of the nations that still exist here, right? Like it would be akin to just taking off Nova Scotia and representing the map, for decades, and of course, people from Nova Scotia or PEI or whoever would certainly be saying, sure. Yeah. "Well, yeah, we're still here. We didn't disappear because you redrew a map." And so that's what today is all about. Today in education is learning that there has been a lot of harm done through education simply from erasing people out of existence that are still here.
So again, Jodie Williams is my guest, co-chair, First Nations, Métis, Inuit Education Association of Ontario, and Indigenous Education lead for Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board. So that's very good. So for example, for Dufferin-Peel Catholic District School Board, somebody going to that particular school board, what are they learning now? What are they learning now? What's part of the curriculum now?
Well, I'm going to broaden it a little bit outside of my school board to say, after the Truth and Reconciliation Commission took place, two of the calls to action in particular called for changes to the curriculum, which did start, and there has been some changes. And when we make changes to the curriculum as educators, I'm an educator, our job is to teach to those expectations. And so now it's written, those pieces are written right in some of the Ontario curriculum. There's still, there was a pause put on it when the change of government took place.
Okay.
And we're still waiting for the unpause button to happen. But what I always say, through the work that I do provincially, through this organization, as well as locally through our school board, that we don't have to wait for the government to put into curriculum what we know that we can do as educators. The curriculum does lend itself, even currently, with the problems that it still has, we can still bring in teaching content in any way that we see fit in terms of whatever the grade is or subject area that we're teaching is.
Right.
So, we still have that latitude in our classrooms to be talking about this.
Yeah, but if you're a teacher and you haven't lived that experience, you don't want to kind of go it alone on that, right?
Absolutely.
You would want to consult someone.
100%.
Right.
Absolutely. So every school board in Ontario also has my role, an Indigenous education lead, and that is the enormous job that we have is supporting educators in navigating this very, very new information, this new ground. And it is, and I turn it back to, the ministry does have a responsibility, and this is the job that we do in the provincial work, is in the advocacy piece, is that there has to be adequate teacher training. And not just a one day or a few hours here and there. Like we're talking about, 200 plus years of history, and that's still very relevant to today, that teachers are just starting to learn about. And so it's a huge learning curve that everyone is on, but we also have to let Indigenous peoples lead the way in doing that. And there's tons of work that's happening on the ground all over, and it's happening very quickly. But there has to be support coming from the ministry, though, which isn't happening right now.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's not just generations of students like me, but now it's generations of teachers with no real history in teaching this sort of thing in the classroom, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. But do you feel, it sounds as though you feel optimistic that progress is being made.
I have to remain optimistic because otherwise, this
can be pretty depressing, right?
Yeah, it's a lot. And however, every now and then, when we do hear back, the reality is there is still racism every single day in schools that students are experiencing under the umbrella of good intention. So the work that I'm involved in with teacher education and training is really understanding intention versus impact. Teachers don't wake up in the morning thinking to themselves, oh, I'm really going to do something awful today in my classroom when I'm teaching. Of course not. No. But we have to shift very quickly from I didn't mean to into really critically examining impact. What is the impact I'm having today in how I'm approaching learning? And so, that's why it's important that educators reach out to their school board leads to ensure that the content that they're teaching is accurate. That's the job that we have numerous resources now on our website that points to accurate, vetted information that teachers can access.
This program is brought to you by Ignite TV. Now you're in command. Visit Rogers.com for more details.